Good morning, everybody. I think that came through. Welcome to this would be our fourth ABTEL meeting of the year, because I think we have one more we were required to do, and then we have one more on the books that if we need it. Thank you so much for coming this morning, and thank you for being patient with us as we transition from staffing changes and leadership changes and location changes. We just got a lot of things going on right now. I like this room better than the one up on the 22nd floor. I think it provides you a little bit more space. We will most likely be there again next month. But after that, if we don't have another meeting until September, we will most likely be in our new space over on Franklin Street, 7th and Franklin. But I don't even know what that space looks like yet because they're still building it. But right now, this will be our space for today, and of course, probably next month as well. If you had any problems with your travel, if you had any problems with your parking, when this is over today, please let me know. Alice did so many things for us, and some of those things we didn't even know she was doing. And then we found out, as she stepped away, and I got a couple calls yesterday saying, hey, what am I supposed to do right here? And I'm like, well, what did you normally do? And they're like, well, this is how it used to happen. I go, okay, well, we can adjust to fix that. And Teresita, who's helping us, is wonderful. None of any of the issues that we have had today or yesterday would be her fault at all. It would just be a transition thing. And she'll probably do even a better job than we're used to, because she's very thorough and very committed to supporting us. Let me go ahead and click, see if it works. Oh, that works the easy way. Of course, we're already past 9, and our actual president is actually here to take over this next step. It always says I'm presiding or someone else, but it really shouldn't be that. It should be you every time. I don't know why on the PAC records it would have whoever the VDOE representative. Like last time it had Tierra, and so I'll see if I can fix that, because you really are presiding. I'm just helping. I'm just the assister. So my opening remarks, and welcome. I think I've made it through that. If you would like to take over for a little bit. We do not have any, we do have a few guests that are guest presenters, and they're in your agenda. I'll go ahead and introduce them. We've got with the math department, the math coordinator, Vicki Bohidar. And we have, it's because when this was printed, we didn't know who our presenter for CTE is going to be, but a familiar face back here. And we also have Malik McKinley, who will be virtual, and he'll go after me. We'll work through the tech of that. And I think that's all the guests that we have currently here. We also will have a visitor part the way through our time today. Our new chief of staff, Holly Coy, will be here. She's double booked right now, and she can't make it until probably like after 9:30, but she'll be joining us. I'll introduce her when she's here, and she'll stay for most of our time. But so when she gets here, I'll introduce her. Without further ado.
Good morning. I'll say it again, good morning. So my apologies for my voice. I think it's already gone on spring break and my body just has to catch up. Nonetheless, as we begin our meeting today, I just want to make sure that you're aware on the rear table of the room is a copy of the meeting minutes as well as our agenda and sign-in sheet. If you need any of those, please find that table. Also, if you need a restroom, you head out immediately to the right of these doors, go through that set of doors, and the lovely people at security will direct you to the restroom should you need it. With that being said, next up on our docket is approval of the agenda. Does require a motion and a second. Eric Moffa moves. Peggy Schindler seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Any abstention? Motion passes. Agenda moves as presented. Next up, we do have approval of our January 12th meeting minutes. Again, that does require a motion and a second.
Motion for approval?
Ron Ramsey moves. Shelby seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Any abstention? Motion passes. Thank you. Rob, I did not receive public comment. Do we have any? Fantastic. Thank you, sir. So next up on our agenda, page 2 is our legislative update. So I'll turn the floor back over to Mr. Gilstrap.
So again, good morning. The last meeting we had was early in the legislative session, and I presented to you the bills that were approaching or in action or were in the first stages. We are now at a different stage in the legislative season. We've finished for us, the hard part, and now we await the governor's decision on the bills. Several of the bills have died or been pushed to another year, or as they politely say, laid on the table. There's lots of fun terminology that goes with General Assembly that goes way back to our politeness as a society back when we first had our first General Assembly. And so I'm going to show you in a second the bills that are still waiting for governor's signature. The governor could also veto these bills. And then that would create a whole nother process where if the General Assembly wanted to try to overrule the veto, that would require quite a lot of cooperation. As a side note, we are also still waiting for a final budget. So that will be news maybe in April by the time we meet, but most likely it won't be until after our last ABTEL meeting. But I'm just going to go ahead and advance to the
Unshare and reshare again, it's lagged on the Zoom.
unshare and reshare. Yes.
Okay. Okay, sure.
What you're seeing is not what I'm seeing. That's why. No, it's not. Yep.
Did it extend your screen again? It did.
In my office, I have 3 screens. And even though we turned them off, he really likes having 3 screens, I guess, because it keeps on wanting to go back to 3 screens. While we're waiting, talk about some of the things we're going to talk about today. Prompt for the one of the things that's going to be important for us to think about is when we're going to meet next year. That is one of our scheduled things that we just have to do. We will have the option of waiting for it this week if we want, but I usually like to give you a month between when the date can be released and the date can finalize. That way this week. But hey, the whole entire southwest part of the state is doing this on that day. You come back with that kind of information. We do have a lot of options on the date. And we even have a consideration of maybe moving our first meeting earlier in the year. We can start back the first or second week of September, but we do have the option of having a meeting in August if we would like. There's nothing good with that.
Yes.
There's nothing that prevents that other than the will of the board. Hey. Sorry for the tech. Here we go. So if you're looking up here, this is hard to read, but you're going to get a copy of this. So I'm going to go, it'll be hard to read for you all. You got a giant screen. It's a little hard for me to read, but I'm going to share this with you after we're done with our meeting. Bills in red are bills that have either failed, died, whatever you want to call them, laid aside, continue till next year. Those are the ones in red. Bills in green are bills that have made it through the legislative process to the point where they sit with the governor now. If there's 2 bills on the same line, that means that they were companion bills. And so that's why there's a couple of them that have 2 different numbers, a House and a Senate bill. I'm going to click through some of these just so I can show you what you have available at this resource. I will say that there's a few bills that have come before us and we've talked about them in the past and then they died in previous years that are back. The ones that have to do with the interstate compacts, those have come before you all as a discussion point in previous years. There's actually 2 interstate compact bills. There's one just for school psychology. That's the HB 255 in the second row. And that one down at the very bottom here, HB 20253 is the one for teachers. And interstate compact is basically a reciprocity process where you have states that usually are in close proximity to each other, agree to work together to be innovative and cooperative on licensure requirements. We already have reciprocity agreements with all the states, so it would be something beyond just that. But right now, that's waiting for the governor. The ones that I'm most excited about, I think, is SB 0450 on the far left. That is an alternate route review work group. What that would be is a group of experts coming together to look at how we do alternate routes, look at the data behind alternate routes, decide are all alternate routes best for teachers, best for students, and then look for holes that we would need to fill to know those answers. Because we will probably find that some of our alternate routes, we would like to have certain points of data that we currently can't get or don't get. And this work group hopefully would reveal that. I will say it's probably a timely approach. And I say that because over the last 4 or 5 years, teacher vacancy rates have been like the topic of at least our office. But in the last couple years, those vacancy rates have come down. And I say all that to say, part of the reason the vacancy rates have come down is because there's a prevalence of alternate routes, easier pathways to become a teacher. And yes, we need teachers, but we need great teachers. So that alternate route pathway is something that we would definitely want to look at very closely. I know that the General Assembly agrees with that because they moved this forward. Let's make sure I don't pull out any of the other ones before I show you what you will see. We do have a bill by proposed, or I guess suggested, wouldn't be proposed because she's not a General Assembly, by Angela. Angela's bill made it all the way through. It's not her bill, but it's one that we sent forward saying, we really think this could help. You want to talk about that bill at all?
You need to come up here, sorry.
Yeah. Or talk real loud.
No, it needs to be picked up here for the Zoom.
It would be HB 1387. This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're familiar with the license revocation process, it's quite a lengthy process involving a school division initiating a petition, holding a hearing. If the local school board approves the recommendation that a license be revoked or suspended, it comes to VDOE and we hold 2 additional hearings. All of those hearings require a panel or a board to consider. All of them require notices. And in one small subset of cases, we propose that all that process is maybe not necessary. And that would be the case where a license holder is convicted of a crime that requires them also to be registered on the sex offender registry. And in that small subset of cases, this bill, if the governor signs it, would allow us to revoke the license automatically. The license, we would present evidence to the board that the person who was convicted and sentenced and ordered to register is the same person who holds the license. The license would be revoked and then a notice would be sent to that person letting them know that their license was revoked. It just eliminates a lot of the process for a person who's already had a lot of due process in courts.
Anybody have any questions about that bill before I move on? Thank you. We also have up here on the board HB 1165, the division superintendent qualification, down here towards the bottom. That bill also could change a few things. It's not a bill that would have like a huge amount of impact, but it could have critical impact. And if you were applying for a division superintendent license, there's 4 pathways that you can take. One of them requires you to have a doctoral degree in education. That pathway also requires you to have a combination of 5 years of teaching experience and admin experience with no less than 2 of each of those kind. And that's what we call option 1. Option 2 allows you to have a master's degree and then 30 hours beyond that master's degree in specific areas related to school leadership. So you don't actually have to have the doctoral degree, but you have to have quite a bit of master's level work. Same requirement for that one requires the 5 years of teaching and admin experience, where it's a minimum of 2 each. Then you got option 3, and option 3 is a master's degree minimum, a valid state license in another state to be a superintendent, plus the 5-year minimum teaching admin experience. But then we have option 4, and option 4 is rarely used, but it is used from time to time. And option 4 is really designed for a school division to have an option to hire somebody who may be an excellent leader, but not necessarily come right out of an education and background. In option 4, you have to have a senior level position. Chief academic, nah, that would probably not count because that'd be education, but CEO of a company, we'll just say that, or a high-ranking military official. It does not require you to have teaching and administrative experience, but it does require you to have a school division write a letter to us saying, we want to hire this person, they're our best candidate. And that's option 4. But this new bill changes the option 4 pretty drastically. It doesn't change much of the other bills other than there's a part of it that asks that a attestment of character be added to all of these. We already do kind of that on our application when we do have you ever been convicted of a crime, the general things that all license holders have, but we'll have to tweak that a little bit. But it takes away the option for option 4 to not have been a teacher or an administrator. It also adds to that you can only get an option 4 if your school division has 2,000 or less students. So it's only for small school divisions at that point. If you go and look at all the option 4s, which we have 131 school divisions that have a superintendent in position, there's only 4, I believe, right now that have option 4s. Of those 4, 2 are from big divisions, 2 are from small divisions, but one of the small divisions is right on that line of 2,000. So it technically would eliminate those other 3, other than they have a clause built in that if you were already in that position by the time, I think it's July 1st, I have to look again. You're kind of grandfathered in, but anybody new would not be allowed. So that one does have an impact on licensure in a fairly significant way. There was one more I wanted to point out. HB 1437 SB 075. So we currently, at the end of the year, do a vacancy report. There is a report that we already do. We gather what we call PEC data, and that informs us on critical shortages. It lets us know the trends of the state. Is the state gaining teachers, losing teachers, high quality teachers versus subs? This bill is going to go a little bit farther with that. It's going to we're going to request information on why somebody's leaving and whether or not their demographics, like are they a male, are they female, are they African American, Caucasian, whatever. And I think there's one other aspect of that bill that we're gathering information on, why they're leaving. And we don't normally gather that information. We just, if they're leaving, they're leaving. I think we used to gather, are you going to another job? Like, are you going to another state, or are you leaving the profession altogether? But that's more of a directional. That's where you're heading as opposed to why you're leaving. And we think that we'll get some important information out of that. Like if there's a whole bunch of them say, well, it's the principal I worked for. I'm leaving because I had a horrible principal. People, the saying is people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. So maybe that'll indicate that. Or it might just indicate things like, I don't make enough money, or the environment is unfulfilling. There could be lots of reasons, but that'll be something that'll be more data for us. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't there already a survey about things like that?
There is, but it doesn't go that deep. We do a survey at the end of the year, and it gives us whether or not they left and where their next intention is. But it doesn't say anything about the actual applicant, as in, is it all male teachers? Is it all female teachers? Is it all whatever?
So this is the same survey, but just.
We will enhance our current survey to not over survey people, but to provide more data within that one survey. And hopefully we'll be able to get all that data and have robust conversation even in this room about it. Anybody else question about that? I'm going to go ahead. There's other bills up here that are definitely valuable. There's a CTE bill, of course. and unpaid leave. We got a grievance bill, non-continuing contract. So there's several other bills that definitely have impact. It's just those are the ones that I see us working more directly with as an ABTEL group. I'm going to go ahead and, yes.
At some point, if we could go over this with me, because I was involved in that bill. It didn't quite, but we can maybe at another meeting talk about it, but the 3-year CTE licensure, there was a lot going on. A lot of people had bills around CTE licensure. It was pretty confusing. So just getting feedback on that at some point would be really good.
I don't know if our CTE person is willing to talk about that when they do their presentation, but if not, we will set that up. And I will agree. I think that over the course of the whole General Assembly, there was like 5 bills, and some were molded into this one, some were just kind of left out. I know that there was 2 bills in the same side that were almost identical. And so they had to decide, well, who's going to get credit for it. So yeah, it was CTE was as it has been over the last several years, a big topic of conversation. But if we don't have enough time to talk about it today, we'll definitely go deeper into that maybe in April. I'm just going to show you what I have on the next slide. Let's see. I go through each bill with a little bit more information. The ones, I guess I should say, let me back up. The ones that are in green, I don't go into detail. If they're no longer around, I didn't go into detail. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before. It's really helpful to me to be able to have these copies to prepare for the meeting. Otherwise, I don't know what questions to ask. And then by the time I have a question, you're gone. So is there any way we can get these things to prepare for the meeting? I know in the past, give it to us afterwards, but I really would appreciate that.
I will do the best I can. I will tell you the reason why we don't do it, why we haven't done it in the past. Once I give out that materials, it has to go public to everyone. I can't give it to you all as like a preview. And sometimes I don't get the materials until we get closer because we have outside presenters, and sometimes they don't. This one, you could have had a week ago. I did this one. You could have had this one a couple weeks ago. But it isn't always the case. It's not always the case that I have. I do, to be honest, I got one of the presentations today late last night. So it wouldn't.
I understand.
Yeah.
Just to the extent that it's possible.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's see. I'm not going to go through each of these. I'm just going to give you a view of what you're going to get as soon as I share this out with you. It just goes into a little bit more detail of each bill, who introduced it, some of the language, and the top part that's in blue is the hyperlink to the bill. So you can actually just go through the bill. But, all right. Let me stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions just in general about General Assembly actions or legislative movements before we move to our next topic? I just want to say also, I am so grateful that you all come to these meetings. We have not always had that. We've had people assigned to our meetings and we would rarely see them. So it is very appreciative. And that's probably why I saw Shelley at a gala and walked up to her. She probably didn't recognize it because I'd shaved my beard and cut my hair, and I just gave her a big hug and said, I'm just so glad you're on ABTEL. So probably an exuberance for having you be so participant and involved.
The devil of the detail. Our next meeting is the 20th of April, after which the governor will have the opportunity to sign. So will that give you enough time to update this presentation so we can see where we are one more time? Based on what?
Only if the bills are signed. If the bills are not signed, if they're vetoed, then they still have life. They just don't have as much life. But once they're signed, it's the General Assembly said we want this. The governor says we want this. There's not a lot of controversy anymore after that point. But if General Assembly says we want this and the governor says, I don't want this, then the General Assembly has to decide, are we going to try to make sure this happens? So though all the signed stuff, I'll be able to update. Anything not signed, I'll just be able to say, we're still waiting.
Can you just disaggregate it like we did on this? Instead of the delegates point, that's something you can push out and we can see in more real time and be prepared to have that conversation.
Right. Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right. Now we have Mr. McKinley. Let's see if I can. Do I need to turn it over to him? You might want to come up here and help me.
Yeah, I'm in spotlight.
Can you say something?
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Try again.
Good morning, good morning.
It's not very loud. Try again.
Good morning.
Is that good? I can go a little louder if I need to. Louder. Try again.
Good morning.
Okay. I need to expand the screen.
It's him.
Okay.
So Malik, you can go ahead. You're on
I'm
the
able
big
to share.
screen and you can share.
Oh, I'm on the big screen.
And everyone's listening to you now.
Okay. And I have just shared my screen. Hopefully it is up.
We're not seeing the full view. So you might need to switch your screen view. We're seeing have you put it in full view yet?
I just did.
We're seeing the other side. So we're seeing still like the minimized version.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen, as he prepares himself, please note we have two presentations for Mr. McKinley. First is going to be review of the new assessment opportunities. And the second is review of the newest elementary education exam, the 8001 series. And should we need to have questions at the end? Yes, forward to have questions at the end.
We're still not seeing your full screen.
I am in presentation mode on my end.
I think you need to, if you have multiple screens, you need to just flip the one that you're sharing.
How is that?
Still seeing the other one. Go ahead
Okay.
and stop sharing, just try again. Maybe it's frozen on our end. There we go.
Is that works?
That's works. You're good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My apologies for not being present this morning in person. That was the original plan. I do like seeing you all in person. Did get a chance to see some of the members at the recent VACTI conference, so that was a good day and a half out in Northern Virginia. So thanks for everyone that stopped by our booth and spoke to us for a few minutes there. We are going to this morning talk about 3 praxis exams. These are the world languages that we're going to discuss this morning. And I also have One of my colleagues, as you can see on screen here, Sumi, she is going to join us in well, she's online now, but she's going to join the conversation in just a few minutes and talk through some elementary education conversations here. So as we move to the agenda and just doing one more check to make sure that the agenda has moved forward.
You're good.
Okay. All right. So in terms of the content, again, we're going to speak about a few of the world languages that Praxis has to offer, including Latin, Chinese Mandarin, as well as Russian. And then I'll ask in a few minutes for Sumi to speak about elementary education fundamentals, which is our latest regenerated version of our elementary education series. And as you all know, currently use 5001. This is the latest iteration of our elementary education series. There's a lot of new things going on in that particular test, as well as the modularity with Praxis steps. So it'll be a good conversation to kind of dive in there. Please feel free to ask questions throughout, or you can hold them to the end, but those are kind of like the two sections that we'll be reviewing this morning. So with Latin, just a quick little bit about the design. The Latin test is designed to assess whether an examinee has the competencies and knowledge necessary for beginning practice at the K through 12 level. As you can see, the content is listed there. This is all in our study companion, but just wanted to pull out a few details so that you can see that on screen. But our study companions have all of this information within the test at a glance section. As you can see, the content categories, most of our world languages are set up in a similar fashion. So you'll have a grammar portion, reading comprehension, you'll have a pedagogical portion. So just kind of keep that in mind. The subtitles or the subcategories may change a bit, but we're following kind of like the same format for our world languages. This particular exam has 120 questions with a time frame of about 2 hours. As I mentioned, we do have a study companion. As you can see on screen here, the test at a glance kind of dives into the content and the way that the test was developed. You'll also see the content broken down, and I know most of you are familiar with Praxis exams, so you'll see the content broken down into subtopics and then bulleted and numbered points beyond that. Within our study companion, for those who aren't familiar, we do have practice questions that kind of is a little bit of the foundation for a candidate's study, but obviously it can't be the total sum. But we do have practice questions with answers and rationales associated with those answers. And there are other tips and ways that a candidate should begin their study built into the study companion. So just a little bit more information here. Most of you are aware of the multi-state study process that ETS goes through when we produce a new test. At some point in our history with Praxis, which started in the 90s, we began standard setting studies at the state level. So each individual state had the opportunity to have just their experts on a panel, and they would set their individual score, which is why you still see some Praxis tests that have a range of scores depending on the state. But most of the Praxis exams have now gone through a multi-state standard setting process, which allows multiple states to come together and set one score. And obviously a state can deviate from that because it's your prerogative, but you'll see more states with a multi-state study standard choosing that particular cut score. So on screen, you're going to see some neighboring states here in the first bullet point here, from DC, at 152, to Maryland at 152, as well as Tennessee and West Virginia at 131. These are all published scores on our website. The most frequent scaled score that was chosen, or cut score that was chosen, is a 152. This exam is used currently by 29 states and a few territories. So the majority of states chose a recommended value of 152, and that also represents, when you take the total sum of all the states, that also represents the mean and the median. So the recommendation from ETS, although this is obviously a state level decision and an ABTEL decision, but the recommendation would point us to the score of a 152 if you're comparing yourself to not only your neighbors, but to most states across the nation. The highest score for this exam is a 161 used by Arkansas, Kentucky, and Rhode Island. And the lowest score is currently being utilized by West Virginia at a 131. So just a little data, keep in mind, there are some languages that are much more popular than others, like Spanish or French. The exams that we're reviewing today have a lower N, but we pulled the data that we could. So over the last few years, there were over 159 users of the Latin exam. And what I did within our data manager system is set the cut score at 152, and that produced the results that you see on screen, 136 people passing, excuse me, at 86%. Similar to Latin, Chinese Mandarin 5665. This is a test that is designed to measure the knowledge and skills, again, of all examinees, teaching from K through 12 as well. You see the content that's listed on screen. The questions in the listening section are based on the audio selections. The questions in the reading section are based on text selections and visual images. Candidates do have an opportunity at the beginning of their exam prior to actually sitting down and taking the exam to choose simplified or traditional characters that will be displayed on screen and that they could use on screen. So just a little information about the content there. In terms of the categories, as you can see, interpretive listening, reading, cultural knowledge, and then obviously there is a writing and speaking component that you'll be familiar with if you're familiar with our Spanish test or our French exam. There are 75 selected response questions on this test and 8 constructed, kind of shortened constructed response questions. And the test is timed at 3 hours. Similarly, there's a study companion with questions, practice questions, as well as answers and rationales. The rest of the study companion is built similarly to all of the study companions in the Praxis program. In terms of some information, as I mentioned, the Latin test was a state standard setting process period for ETS. So states set their own cut score. This exam went through a multi-state standard setting process in 2012. There were 37 panelists from 18 states across the nation. Neighboring states include Kentucky, Maryland, North Carolina, and Tennessee. The number that you see listed next to each state represents the number of panelists that they had on this particular study. There were 2 panelists, as you can see, from Virginia that participated, both out of Fairfax County Public Schools. The recommended passing score was 65 out of 98 raw score points, and with our conversion that led to a score of 164. This test is used currently by 32 states and territories. When you consider all of the state cut scores, again, keeping in mind that although the recommendation is a 164, each state can adopt at whatever score point they choose or whatever cut score they choose. So the highest cut score is from Maryland at 165, and the lowest cut score is currently Utah at 145. But again, the recommended passing score is a 164, and both the median and mode and the most frequent number obviously here is a 164 out of all 32 states. So most states that currently use this exam have adopted the test at the mark of 164. There have been 597 users of this exam, with the recommended study value and also the average here of 164 that led to a 95% pass rate and the number passing 567. And lastly, similarly here, Russian. This is, as you can see here with the design, because programs in teaching Russian are offered at both the undergrad and graduate levels, the exam is appropriate for examinees at either level. You see the content that's listed here, and I'm just letting you kind of take some of this in for a moment. You see the content that is listed here with the categories: interpretive listening, reading, knowledge, writing, and speaking. In terms of performing well on this exam, test takers should be able to demonstrate language proficiency, understand linguistics, demonstrate cultural understanding, and have a sufficient background in Russian literature and the arts, history, and geography. Number of questions, 75 selected response questions, 6 constructed response questions, and the total time, similarly to Chinese Mandarin, is 3 hours. And we won't spend much time here. The study companion with the content and also questions. In terms of the multi-state standard setting study, this test did also go through a study that took place in April 2022 in Princeton. We had 7 panelists from 4 states. Currently, neighboring states around Virginia include Kentucky at a 125 score point and West Virginia at a 130 cut score. The recommended value is 130. And currently there are 15 states and territories that use this exam. This is a smaller exam, and you'll see with the passing, the number of candidates in just a moment that have actually taken this exam. But the majority of states, keeping in mind the recommended passing score was a 130, the majority of states chose the recommended value of 130. So that's 12 out of the 15 states that currently use this test chose a score point of 130. The lowest score points, below that marker are currently Arkansas and Missouri, and they do have some -1 and -2 SEM rules that are built into their procedures at the licensure level. So that's why you'll see those score points at 119. But again, 12 out of 15 states currently are using this exam, and they have a score point of 130. 9 test takers over the last few years with the cut score of 130. All 9 passed, 100% passing rate. And we will pause there and just see if there are any questions, and I can turn it back to you, Rob, for a moment, unless you'd like us just to continue on and move into elementary education.
Would you mind talking about why Arabic was removed from our list?
Oh, surely. So we don't currently offer an Arabic exam. but I think most folks in here are familiar with ACTFL, which does offer Arabic, and there are states that we work with in the praxis program that use the foreign language or the world language exams that praxis has to offer. And if there is an extensive list of additional world languages that are needed for certification, they usually pivot to the use of an ACTFL exam in that case.
Anybody have any questions for him on this presentation? I'll relay it to, so just say.
Okay,
Lauren.
so for clarification, just so people aren't aware, the actual test, to my knowledge, does not test cultural or pedagogical. If he's talking about the actual efficiency interview, you're literally just certifying based on somebody speaking enough Arabic to communicate. Is that clear? Yeah. But still, that doesn't speak to these tests have some sort of cultural component as well. And I saw some other pedagogical knowledge, there is not that, if they're just using ACTFL for Arabic, it's just you speak and write Arabic enough to, we're certifying you based on the language knowledge, not certifying you based on your ability to teach that language. So then just clarifying, you weren't, for people who are.
Blake, did you hear that, or do I need to repeat it for you?
No, I did hear that, and just to clarify on my end, I'm not here to promote ACTFL. I'm just suggesting that that is what some states do pivot to, but you know, you'd have to probably speak to representatives of that organization to kind of dive into the content, because I'm unaware of the entirety of their program.
Just in case those of you that are listening weren't able to hear the comments talked about how the test for Arabic is not on the same par as our praxis test, as it left these cultural elements, as well as it's more of a, can you understand and say things in Arabic? We have more questions.
When someone registers to take a praxis, do they still have access to a free study guide and practice test? Or is that what the study companion has taken the place of?
The question is about access to study guides and the companion when they register for the test.
Yes, prior to registration, the study companion, which has our test at a glance, which goes over the content, is available free of charge online, and they can download that at any moment. At the point of registration, once they complete registration, the candidate will also receive an interactive practice test for free, and that will be able to be downloaded from their account as well.
Is ETS going to plan to offer Arabic?
The question is ETS eventually planning to add Arabic?
We do review the battery of praxis tests on a yearly basis. I don't know the status of Arabic. I know it's not in development as we speak, but I can certainly share this particular challenge with leadership, and I can get back to you on whether that will be pursued or not. But at this time, no, we don't have a plan to develop an Arabic exam.
I think I saw at least one more hand. Yep.
Quick question about the Russian slide. They listed just interpersonal speaking and writing. On the website, I think I saw also presentational, and those are different skills. Is the Russian also has presentational writing and speaking?
Can you go back to the Russian test? There was a thought that presentational is also part of that, but we didn't see it on the slide.
This section here.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Personal communication and not presentational communication?
Does it only assess interpersonal communication and not presentational communication?
Give me a moment and I can dig a little deeper into the categorical information here.
Okay. While he's doing that, was there another question?
Do any of these tests have the bridge on? The answer is no, but all. How much are
I think all the bridges are the same cost. While you're looking, the next question is, do any of these tests have the bridge option? And if they do, how much do they cost?
These exams do not have the bridge component, but we are working diligently to add bridge enabled modules for exams. We don't have a list of what that could be for this year, but in future years, we are thinking about additional, probably high volume exams that would be bridge enabled, but these currently do not know.
Thank you.
And just as an aside for Praxis Bridge, the current cost is $50 for a bridge module.
And that's no matter which test you take, correct?
For the tests that are available with Bridge,
Yeah.
yes, no matter which one.
Do you need a few more minutes to look what you were looking up, or do you want to go?
Yeah, you know what, if there aren't any other questions, can we continue to move forward? And I'll dig a little deeper with my assessment development team for a response, and I'll share that back with you, Rob.
Okay. If it's something that will prevent people from wanting to vote at the end, we'll take it off the voting and bring it back to the next ABTEL meeting, but I'll let the group decide whether or not they want to do that when we get to that portion of our presentation. But go ahead and begin your second presentation.
Okay. All right, so elementary education fundamentals test. This is kind of broken up. No, just have a few slides here, but broken up into two portions as we talk about elementary education, as well as the steps components built into elementary education. And Sumi, as you can see on screen, is available to walk through this presentation and respond to any questions. Thank you.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Malik. Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm excited to share some information about our new elementary education fundamentals tests, and these will be incorporating the new Praxis Test modular testing capability that Malik was talking about. And so we'll go to the next slide. So there are 5 new elementary education fundamentals tests that we'll be launching, and these will be eventually replacing several different series of elementary education tests. We know that Virginia currently uses the 5001 multiple subjects tests. And in the footnote, you can see there are other elementary ed tests with different codes, 701, 5901, and the Content Knowledge for Teaching 7811 series. So our goal is to update the tests to the latest standards and to consolidate some where there's overlap, and also give states the flexibility to choose the tests that are most appropriate for them. So on the left, you can see we have 2 different flavors of the reading test. There's reading and language arts, which is closely aligned to the 502 test. And we also have a teaching reading test, which is more aligned with our 7001 series. We have a mathematics test, social studies, and science. And one thing to note about the new test, we do not have a combined test option for the new test where candidates take all of the tests in one sitting. They would take each test individually, but they can schedule multiple appointments on a single day. Okay, and we'll move on to the next slide. And so with all of our Praxis tests, every few years, we'll look at the latest standards, make sure that our tests are aligned with the latest standards. With these elementary education tests, it was time to update them, incorporate them to better align with the latest standards from CAPE, ILA, AMTE, etc. And the content distribution has been revised to better reflect the essential skills that elementary teachers need across each content area. We've also incorporated presenting content in the context of applied practice. So each of these tests do include tasks that integrate the tasks of teaching. Our tests are also incorporating more science of reading principles, social studies, inquiry skills, and science and engineering practices. And of course, we have engaged practicing educators throughout the development process, including in the multi-state standard setting study portion. These tests are also going to be enabled with praxis steps. So this is our new modular testing capability that will allow test takers to take the tests in smaller sections or steps. And EPPs and states will also get more granular data to help support their candidates and to drive program improvements. So first I'll talk more about the elementary ed tests themselves, and then we'll go into some of that modular testing capability. In terms of key dates with the introduction of these tests, we just launched the full test, so each of the 5 elementary ed fundamentals tests in March. Candidates are able to take that. Registration is open, study companions are available, and interactive practices tests are available as well. The first set of score reports will be reported on April 17 for candidates who tested in that March timeframe. And you can see the additional score reporting dates for future test dates as well. With the Praxis Steps modular testing capability, that will be introduced in a later phase. So initially, it's each of the 5 full tests that candidates are able to take. They take it all, each test in its entirety. The modular testing capability will be introduced in the summer when we have enough data from the full test to be able to open up that capability. And at that point, candidates who have gotten their score reports for the full test will see for each of the content categories or steps whether they have passed or not passed based on their state's requirements. And at that point, they can choose to retake just the step they didn't pass, or they can retake the entire test. And again, we'll go into that in a little more detail. Okay. So here's some more information about the Reading and Language Arts update. I believe you'll get, or you already have these slides, so I won't go through all of this in detail, but you can see at a glance that this structure didn't change so much from the current 5002 test. It's still broken down into reading and writing, speaking, and listening. The number of questions and the weight has changed slightly. But it's still 80 total questions. We're allowing for a little more time with this test, 100 minutes. And approximately 10 to 15% of the questions call for that application of reading and language arts, content and processes within a teaching scenario or an instructional task. So each of these new tests will incorporate some of those tasks of teaching questions. We'll go on to the next screen. Now, this is our 806 teaching reading test. It is an update of the 7002 teaching reading test. I know that's not a series that you currently use, but we did want to share a comparison of how that test compares. The structure is very similar. Some of the content categories did get consolidated, but it covers the main areas of the science of reading principles. And again, the number of questions are the same. And in this case, the testing time based on the questions that have been updated is a little bit less than the current test. Okay. And feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions, and we'll definitely have time after as well. Again, I won't go into detail on this, but for states that might be considering 802 or 8006 and trying to understand the difference, the Reading and Language Arts test is a little bit more broadly covering both the reading and the language arts side. The teaching reading is a little bit more focused on science of reading, although 802 also includes that science of reading. So we just wanted to give you the information. Some states may choose one or the other. Some states may choose both, depending on your needs. And in the next slide, there's a little bit more information, again, about the similarities and the differences. And if this is something that Virginia wants to understand a little bit more, or if we need to bring in a reading specialist to explain those differences, we're happy to follow up in a separate meeting as well. But the next slide, this shows a comparison of our teaching reading elementary 5205 standalone test that I believe is currently being used by Virginia in addition to the 5001 series. So I did want to show that comparison across the different teaching reading assessments. 5205 is more focused on that science of reading and also includes three constructed response questions in addition to the 90 selected response questions, and it's 150 minutes. The 7002 teaching reading test was an adaptation of that 5205 test, but it does not have those constructed response questions. And then when you look over at 8006, which is an update of 702, again, it covers the same principles as 5205 and 702, but it also does not include those constructed response questions. Okay. With the mathematics test, it has also been updated to the latest standards. You can see compared to the 5003 test on the left side, and there's also the 7003 test, all based on the same domains. We're still covering numbers and operations, algebraic thinking, and geometry, measurement, and data. The various committees, the National Advisory Committee and other committees that we had felt that the emphasis, there's less emphasis on statistics and probability. And so you can see that that has been updated in the new tests. And there are 68 questions and the total testing time is 100 minutes for this. Okay. Social studies, again, a comparison, many of the same topics, slightly different weighting and increased number of questions, and the total testing time available to the candidates. Again, with all of these new tests, there are 10 to 15% questions that call for the application of social studies content and processes within a teaching scenario or instructional task. And lastly, the science test. Similar content categories, earth and space sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences. And this new test will also incorporate those tasks of teaching science, but it will also include questions that integrate science and engineering practices. Okay. Like Malik was saying, with our more recent test, we do conduct these multi-state standard setting studies for this because there were 5 different tests. We had 42 panelists from 22 states participate virtually. The 2 reading tests had a single panel that looked at both reading tests. And then there was a panel for each of the math, social studies, and science tests. I did go back and look, and it looked like there were 3 participants from Virginia who participated in the standard setting. And so we certainly can share this report, the technical report, if it hasn't already been shared with you. And on the next screen, you'll be able to see the recommended passing scores from the committee, as well as the different options. And of course, states can choose the passing scores that are most appropriate for their state. Okay, before I move on to the modular testing capability, any questions about the content? Okay, let's keep going then. Okay, so praxis steps. It is a modular approach to testing that enables candidates to take a praxis test in smaller focus sections or steps. And this gives them that flexibility to take the test in the way they feel most confident to succeed. Some candidates may choose to take each full test all in one sitting, so the full science test or the full social studies, and then after they get their results, they can retake just the step that they didn't pass. Other candidates, when that STEPS capability does open up in the summer, They may choose to take one step at a time, perhaps aligned with what they're learning in their EPP curriculum. They will bank their scores and apply the highest results toward their overall test score. And this new capability is being introduced with our elementary education fundamentals tests, but we'll be expanding to incorporate that into additional practice tests moving forward. Move on. Some of the benefits, which we've already covered a little bit, but for test takers, having that flexibility to test in the way that they feel most confident to succeed may help reduce some performance anxiety, testing anxiety. And if they retake just the step that they didn't pass, rather than having to retake the full test, that can save them both time and money. And the ability to base their overall test score on their highest results for each step just give them more ways to succeed and meet their passing requirements. With states, it will allow the states to provide more options for candidates to take and pass their tests, which of course means more certified teachers entering the classroom. And we're trying to introduce ways to help reduce barriers to the classroom without lowering standards. For our EPPs, we'll be providing more targeted data to help provide more targeted support for candidates. And states and EPPs can leverage that data to understand where candidates are struggling and to help improve their program. So this just illustrates what the steps look like for the 5 new elementary education fundamentals tests. You can see up at the top, those are each of the full tests: reading and language arts, teaching reading, mathematics, etc. Underneath are the steps, which for these tests correspond with their content categories. So as we were looking at earlier, reading is one step, writing, speaking, and listening is another step. When that steps capability opens up in the summer, candidates can just choose to take one of the steps and then the next step and the next step until they've completed all of their steps and then gotten a final test score. Or they can take that full test and then when they get their results, choose to retake just the step that they did not pass. So we have an example on the next slide of what that might look like for a science test. On the top is a progression path. That's where Jordan will take one step at a time as she completes her coursework. So she'll start with the Earth and Space Sciences step, get those results. She'll take the Life Sciences step and then the Physical Sciences step. And at the end, she'll get her overall score report for the Praxis 8005 test. On the bottom, the targeted retake path is where Taylor takes the full Praxis 8005 test. He gets his results, and he does not pass just the physical sciences step. So he retakes just that step. He gets an updated score report and passes the 8005 test. So this is just illustrating 2 different pathways to achieve the same passing result, same test, same standards, just different ways to get there based on the test taker's preference and comfort level. And lastly, we just wanted to share some of the resources that are available related to these new tests. We have many crosswalks that are of the new tests to the national standards. We have test review videos and presentations, crosswalks with the 5001 series, study companions, study plans, curriculum crosswalks, and many other resources, including an EPP toolkit if and when you're ready to share this information with your EPPs as well. So you can click on any of those links when you look at the PowerPoint. And then finally, some of the resources for preparing for the new tests. The study companions are a great way to familiarize yourselves and for candidates to familiarize themselves with the new tests. It includes those sample questions and answers and rationales and provides general assistance for the test. We have study plans that allow candidates to rate how well they know that test content based on the updated test domains and identify resources to study and then set their dates when they will study the content and track their progress. We do have interactive practice tests for each of the 5 new tests. And like with other practice tests, when they register for the new tests, they will get a free interactive practice test with their registration. And lastly, our partner study.com has updated their prep courses to align with the new tests. And so they also have updated courses that are available with the study.com official practice test prep subscription. And I believe that is it. But opening it up for questions.
Anyone have any questions?
So, and all the steps are in the same environment as the typical test?
Are all the steps in the same environment as the typical test?
Yes, so they're almost like mini tests that are going to be, when they become available, a candidate can sign up to register for an individual step from their state requirements page if the states have adopted the test with the steps. They schedule it. It's just a shorter duration for their appointment because it's a shorter portion of the test, but they can take it at home or they can take it at a test center, just like any other praxis test.
Okay, and let me make sure I have this right for the 8002. I have 2 steps. 8003, 4 steps. 8004, 3 steps. And 3 steps for 005 and 006.
He's
Correct. I
clarifying
think
that there's a different number of steps per subtest.
correct. So the 8002 test, first looking at the content categories and the way that the questions made sense to organize, just like with the current 5002 test, currently only has 2 content categories. And so we align the steps around those content categories. The other tests do have 3 content categories. And so we align the steps to those content categories. So they're 3 steps.
And so the last question I have is that how does the bridge work with the steps? So right now, if the student is a few points away from a passing score, they get an email that they qualify for the bridge. Is the bridge going to be based on the individual steps or still the entire test?
So
Yeah, I heard the question. Yeah, good question. And I forgot to mention this in these slides. So these new elementary fundamentals tests will be bridge enabled. And so on day 1, when the tests are offered and then candidates get their first score reports, if they meet the requirements for bridge, which will continue to be at the overall test level. So for the full science test 8005, if they are within 1 SEM of a state's passing score for that 8005 test, if that state has adopted bridge, then they will be eligible to take that bridge module. So candidates can choose to do that, or they could choose to retake, the specific step or content category that they did not pass. Now, the benefit of Praxis Steps is just another option for candidates who might not be eligible for bridge. So maybe they did not, meet that within 1 SEM of passing at the overall test level, but it could still just be one content category step where they struggled. They can just choose to retake that step to meet their passing requirements. So that it just opens it up a little bit more, not just for the candidates who are within 1 SEM of passing.
So if I understand that right, if you didn't qualify for the bridge, you could go back and take 1 step, and that particular step may actually qualify, depending on what your score was, would qualify you for the bridge.
So the question was, if you didn't pass, didn't get close enough for the bridge, you took the step test gets you close enough to qualify for the bridge, could you then do the bridge?
Absolutely. So if you retake the step, first of all, maybe you retake the step, you'll get an updated overall score report. A new total score skilled score will be generated based on your highest step result. So you might end up passing after retaking just that step. But if you don't and you do end up now with an updated total score that gets you close enough to be eligible for bridge, then yes, you could choose to take that bridge module at that point.
And each test is still $30?
Each test is still $30.
The test itself, and Malik, I believe we have a slide in the appendix with the pricing. So the current 5001 series, I believe each individual subtest, the 5001 series, you can see all the way on the right, is $64. And the combined test for the current 5001 tests is $180. So you'll see in the middle, the standard pricing for these new tests, for each test, sort of the equivalent of a subtest, is $79. If you retake or take an individual step, the step is $39.50. And although we don't have a combined test code planned for a candidate to take all 4 or all 5 tests in one sitting, which would be a very long appointment, we will be offering, beginning June 1, a multiple full test discount. So if you order all 4 full tests in one order, you'll get a discounted price of $199.50. So we did try to be mindful of the current pricing, recognizing also that some of the tests are a little bit longer. Now, right now, we're in an early adoption phase, so there is an even deeper discount at 75% off. That's for the early adoption for candidates who test before May 31st. But even during the regular pricing, you know, that middle column shows what the pricing will be.
I believe Dr. Cox was trying to get us a deal in Virginia by his question.
Okay.
They took them $79. That's just moved to $379. $395. They took them 70. We need this one.
We needed it. He says, when you add them all together, we need a discount. It's quite a
Right,
lot of
so-
money for all
Yeah.
of them together.
Yeah, so definitely in that bottom row, if you sign up for all 4 of the tests or 3 full tests, and you'll get that a good discount that is pretty close to the current tests. So $199.50 for the 4 full tests. Where candidates may also see a benefit in terms of pricing is in today's world, if you sign up for the test, $64, and you don't pass, you retake the full test, $64, you might not pass again. And so you only have the option to take that full test. Whereas when that STEPS capability opens, if they take that full test and it's just one of the steps that they don't pass, they could retake just that individual step for $39.50. And so hopefully that will also provide that benefit.
Yes, we have another question.
If we add the 8006 teaching and reading, are we still having elementary teachers take the 205 teaching and reading as well?
I think that these would replace all the 5,000 level tests.
To include the 205?
I think so.
Is it the 21? He's, doesn't, it didn't. So. It's a 3-week window, when they find out that it's there's music. And then they have weekly two. Yes. So they get interested.
Yeah, the question was about timing of getting your scores, choosing to retest, and whether or not you'd make that deadline for the discount. It's a pretty close window.
For the early adoption discount, the May 31 discount?
I believe so, yes. Got another question?
So in where it says like you register for 4 full tests and you're saving some money, but this is 5 tests.
Mhm.
So are we saying that people are registering for four and then taking another one?
It's because the reading one is an and or.
Okay, that was the thing. Okay, so wait, it's the reading, it's 8,002 or 8,006?
An and or is how it's presented.
Okay.
Right, so I think each state can decide whether they want to adopt all 5 tests. If they want that coverage of broader coverage of reading and language arts, as well as a test that goes a little bit more deeply into the science of reading principles. There are some states that may choose to stick with the reading and language arts test or the update of that. That would be 8002, and may keep the current teaching reading elementary test 5205, which goes a little more in depth into science of reading, as well as has those 3 constructed response questions. So each state can decide what is that right combination for them. You know, can do 802 and 5205, 802 and 8006. Or just 8006. And so, you know, we do have some options depending on what your focus is for your candidates.
John L.
But
Hold on just a second.
Sure.
John L. So if we were to add the 5th test, would that be redundancy based on what our EPPs are also going to be expected to do, or would that reinforce what we are doing with our EPPs for the science of reading, the VLA, by adding that 5th test? I know. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
That would be something I think we would want to have considered.
Conversations about.
Yeah. I mean,
I would like to, I'm a visual, so I would like to see what we're doing now, whether, here, and then we can look and make it, put it more.
I think based off what she just said, sorry.
okay, I've had a suggestion from our president. Before I make that suggestion, can you tell me the timing in which the 5,000 tests is expected to go away?
Absolutely. So we wanted to give states enough time to transition off of that. And so right now our targeted date to retire the 5001 series is August of 2028.
Okay. that gives
Some
us-
states are choosing to, you know, make that transition sooner, but we will work with our states to make sure there's enough time.
So I had a few questions myself. If they're redundant to ones that are already asked, we'll skip over them real quickly, but you talked about steps and you talked about scores on steps. So if you take the whole test and you meet the required score, you pass. If you don't meet the required score, then we go to the one that you're probably lowest on, and that would be the one they would test on the step.
Correct. I'm wondering, Malik, I think we have something in the appendix with a mock-up of the score report. So yeah. So this is an example, and this is just a mock-up right now. If a candidate took the full test, they got their scaled score, and they did not pass. If you go to the next slide in section 2, so this is an update of what the score report will look like when we launch this. You can see for State A, Department of Education, in that dotted red line box, now in addition to the full score that they will get for that 8005 science test, they're also going to see their results for each of the steps or content categories. And behind the scenes, there is a required score that they need to meet that corresponds with the state's cut score. If they did not meet that requirement for physical sciences, they'll see not passed. And when that STEP's capability opens up in summer, they can choose to retake just that step. It is possible that a candidate might not meet the requirements for 2 of the steps. In that case, they can decide whether to retake the full test or retake each of the steps, maybe focusing on studying for one step first and then the other step after. So it's a little bit different from Bridge, where Bridge assigns the module where they, a module for the content category where they performed or struggled the most. In this case, if they didn't meet the passing requirement for more than one step, that would show here, and they would be expected to meet those requirements, just as they would have to if they were taking the full test. It's just a different way of breaking it out into smaller chunks.
Okay, so this is the companion question to that. Is there a cut score that needs to be attained by each step? Or is it just the combined score, let's say all three steps, that have to average out to the cut score for the full test?
There is a corresponding cut score at each of the step levels that they need to meet that corresponds with the state's requirements. So if your requirement was a qualifying score of 143, then the steps cut scores would also be corresponding behind the scenes to that.
Okay, so we wouldn't need to come up with individual ones. Once one cut score was determined, it would automatically apply to the rest.
Correct.
Okay, I have another question from our group.
I think maybe is it possible to score really high on some of the steps and fail one of the steps and still pass the test?
I think the answer is yes, but we'll see. Is the answer yes to that? If you knocked it out of the park on one test and had a failing score in one of the other subtests, you'd overall pass because your score might be high enough to get across the threshold?
It is possible, and that exists today with these praxis tests. So compensatory scoring is what we have called that. That will still exist. I know it can seem a little bit confusing, but that possibility is there if they perform really well on, two of the three steps. That could exist as well.
I have another question. So for us to adopt the bridge, we needed Board of Education approval to do that, coming out of a recommendation from this board right here. Are you saying that the steps do not require board or approve, or any states requiring there to be a state adoption of steps?
I think that will vary by state. First, looking at the elementary education fundamentals tests, you may choose to adopt those tests based on, the updates, and, the existing tests will eventually be retired. In terms of the steps capability, states can choose to adopt it with or without steps, but really the states so far have been interested in that steps capability and offering that benefit to their candidates to have that flexibility without, sacrificing any quality or standards. And so I guess it would be up to you and your state whether that requires board approval or not. And then states may also choose to adopt these new elementary ed tests with Bridge. But if you're not ready for Bridge for these tests, that would be the state's choice as well.
Okay, so let's say it takes us an extra couple months to get this all the way through our process. Will you be blocking Virginia applicants from doing steps until we give you the go-ahead that we will accept steps?
So the steps capability will not open up in any case until summer, but if Virginia chooses to adopt the new tests, but are not certain about the steps capability, then on the Virginia requirements, assuming that steps has already launched in the summer, we would only show the full tests to be available to register. We will not show those individual steps from the Virginia page. I will say that the steps capability and some of the reporting that comes with it It is recommended that if you choose to adopt it at the, in time for a testing year. And that will make some of your data in the ETS data manager a little bit more clean to be able to know that within that testing year, everybody had the steps option or not. But we can certainly work with you to understand any concerns or timing issues to be aware of. And so we will work with you to meet your needs.
My last question, well, it may not be the last question, but my last question is a little off that path, but it was back towards your presentation. You talked about a lot of the elements that are included in these tests, but I didn't see any inclusion of any computer science skills. Are those embedded in each of the subtests? Are they not involved? Can you give me some feedback on computer science within the elementary test?
I'm not sure if they're incorporated anywhere. I would have to check with our test developers and take a closer look. The main subject areas obviously are the reading, math, social studies, and science, but I don't know if any aspects of computer science were incorporated in there.
Okay. I have one more question from our group.
Somewhere where we could see, and maybe it's just, I just need to look at the 5 slide, the difference in how long these tests are total. And maybe it's just, I should have written down, comparatively to what they're taking right now, how much longer or shorter this test is total.
Yep, that was in the slides. It does have the length of each test. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The question was about the length of the test, but you did cover.
Yes. And Malik, if you wanted to go back to any of the 802 to 806 test slides, there is a comparison of the current number of questions as well as the current time allotted for the tests. So
Yeah,
I think,
those ones right there. At the very bottom of those, it has the length of the test for the old test and the new test for each one. And the bottom. Test time, 90 versus 100. And some of them were shorter and some of them were longer. I don't know if the total made it longer or shorter, but yeah. Is that everybody's questions over this topic? Yes.
I did have one question for you if you don't mind, but certainly.
We got one more from them and then I'll
Okay.
take your question.
Okay.
Are you saying that the broken up tests can be not the same length as the other tests? Is that, are these summarized tests, broken down for people to pass, or is it the same material?
So I believe her question was like the overall test versus the overall test, but could you answer whether or not the subtests equal, like the one that's on the screen right now? We've got reading, writing, speaking, listening, and the total time there is 100 minutes. Is it fair to assume that a subtest for reading is 50 minutes because it's half of that time, or is that not a fair assumption?
It's not exact, and I think in the study companions, we do show what the time is for each of the areas. If you are taking the full test all in one appointment, so for the 802, if you were taking that test all in one day, you will get 100 minutes to cover either of the sections. Just like in today's 502 test, you can kind of go back and forth between content categories. If you do choose to take one step at a time when that is offered in the summer, there is a shorter amount of time for taking reading, and I don't have that readily available, but it is in the study companion. So, it may be 60 minutes and 40 minutes. I can't remember offhand, but that will be specified.
We have a follow-up.
Follow-up, yes. My concern is if the public were to look at how we were evaluating teachers and what hurdles we were requiring for qualification, would one be able to make the argument if breaking these tests up actually presents applicants with less rigor than they would having taken the full test.
So the question is about, is breaking the test to pieces resulting in less rigor?
Absolutely not. It's the same test, same questions, same validity, same passing requirements. Just think of it as just taking it in smaller sections. And so it's like taking 1/3 of the test or, half of the test in an appointment for those who want to do that, but the same rigor, the same quality, same, level of standards. It's just for those who may prefer to focus on one area at a time. They might feel that all of the science test is a little daunting and they want to focus on earth and space sciences first. They can do that. Or again, if they're retaking just one section, it would be the same quality, same standards.
Any other questions? You had a question for me, just making sure I don't. Okay, what's your question for us, I guess? You had a question for us?
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. I guess I wanted to just understand. So I heard you say if Virginia chose not to adopt with steps initially, I just wanted to get a sense of if there were concerns or if it's more of the matter of timing and approval, or if there are any other questions that we can answer for you related to steps, if you're having any thoughts about that.
Well, we've asked a lot of questions already, so that would indicate that we have some questions already. I know that we have some concern just immediately with whether or not all 5 tests need to be required or 4. And to be honest, it's not us who makes the final decision on this. It's the Board of Education. We make the recommendation. The Board of Education decides if they're going to adopt it or not. So we're just trying to make sure that we get ahead of any possible questions they may have and concerns they may have. I would say if this group was not in favor of this, we most likely wouldn't take it to the board directly. So it is important that all hearts and minds in this room are also in alignment. I wouldn't say that a delay means that we don't think it should happen. I would say a delay means we want to know a little bit more about some of the aspects that we had questions on. And I'm sure we'll collect, if that is the choice, we'll collect some questions and send them to Malik and he can help us with the answers as we develop our next steps.
That makes sense. Great, thank you.
And Rob, just for point of clarity, I hear the conversation around the current structure. So currently, Virginia is using all 4 of the tests within 5001, which includes reading language arts as one of the subtests. And you also are requiring 5205, which is teaching reading. So it is that 5 tests that are used for elementary education. As you all in the subsequent months here think about the 8001 series, I heard someone say something about it being redundant to adopt all 5 of the 8001 series or this 8000 series here, and then also still keep 5205. Because we're talking about the 5th test within the 8000 series is similar to the teaching reading. There are a few differences, but those 2 teaching reading exams are very similar. It's just some of the structure is different between the exams, but those are, so that would be I think a part of the consideration, right? Because you wouldn't want to have those 5 exams, including teaching reading, but then also have another teaching reading exam component as well. And then the other consideration is whether Virginia is interested more in teaching reading or reading language arts, or still interested in both, which is the current format. Lastly, the only other thing I'll share is there are some states that are going to be considering 8001 or currently considering 8001, and because 5001 is not being discontinued this year. They're putting a policy in place that allows for candidates to use one or the other so that they can start to get some data on the new series and see how it works in state, but still keep 5001 available for anyone that is currently in a program and has already started their study aligned to the 5001 series. So just sharing that as other options that states pursue.
Andy?
The current job, it's not going away, obviously. It's still here to stay, to me.
The current what?
Current, the two,
It,
or five.
what's your expected end of the 5,000? I know you said that, is that 2028?
2028. So it's a few years out here.
2028.
I don't. Yeah, can I clarify?
Does that include 5205?
5205 will continue on, so that won't be retiring.
Okay.
Sorry, Malik, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, all good. Thank you.
If we adopt the 8,000 series, but keep the 5,000 as well, as Malik just suggested for a certain period of time, will the 5,000 series have that step capability come the summer like the 8,000 series does?
Yeah. The question is, if we were to maintain both of them temporarily, would the 5,000 series also have the step capability, or is that just going to be in the 8,000?
That will just be in the 8,000, yeah.
So this is Rob. This is new technology and flexibility that we're building into praxis assessments from this point forward. So we're starting with elementary education, and obviously in the future we're going to think about how to incorporate steps in new tests. But we're not going backward. We're moving forward with new tests developed. Yeah,
I understand.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. No other questions? Huh? Thank you both.
Rob, I did have a follow-up to I think someone asked about interpersonal and presentational writing in the Russian exam.
Yes.
So just real quickly, within our study companion, this can be found online as well. There are a couple different components that speak to the presentational writing within the Russian test. And I'll just read real quickly here. Presentational writing, there's an opinion position essay where candidates will be asked to write an essay in Russian, excuse me, on a specific topic. There's presentational writing integrated skills where candidates will have to read a passage in Russian, and this passage will also appear in the writing and speaking sections. And after reading the passage, they'll have to complete a writing task on that passage in Russian. There's within the speaking section as well, presentational speaking. There's integrated skills. Candidates will be asked to speak on a topic related to the passage that they've read, and they'll have some time to kind of go back and forth and provide that response. And there's also presentational speaking, express an opinion or make an oral presentation, where candidates will be asked to give an oral presentation on a specific topic. And similarly here, they'll have a period of time to read the directions. They'll hear the topic, and then they have 2 minutes to record a response. And again, that response has to be in Russian. So there's interpersonal and presentational portions within the writing and speaking sections. And hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you for that follow-up information. And
Yes,
also
sir.
thank you both for your presentations. We're going to take a break here in a second. So we won't get to the votes on this until a little bit later. Probably the food that's here, people. So thank you so much. And you guys have a great rest of your day, or you're welcome to hang on until we do the votes a little bit later.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you
a great
very
day.
much. Bye.
This is up through here. Look, or not. You have to create break. I don't get to do
Right,
that.
so your presentation is next in there. And then we also have adjournment listed at 11:30. So given that,
Working lunch.
work,
So let's take the break. I'll get the food in here and we'll do the working lunch.
also, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10:55. We'll go into recess until 10 minutes after 11.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll reconvene at 10 minutes after 11.
Thank you.
Working lunch. Convene the meeting. Next up, we have Mr. Bill Stratt providing us a presentation on Nora. Of which then we'll go to another presentation. So if you haven't been able to get your lunch, please know it isn't rare in the room. And again, restrooms are down the hall and field.
First off, this is probably your fourth time hearing this update, this NORA update, because we've been kind of talking about it almost every ABTEL meeting. This is the part of the math changes that we had last year, and the math changes are a two-part. So we have my presentation, which is going to be pretty short, just this is where we're at. And then we get a little bit more about the geometry side of this, and hopefully a little bit more deeper understanding of how the assessment might match up to our standards. So here we go. Just as a reminder, this is what we were actually required to do based on last year's legislation, issue a fast track regulation to amend regulations establishing the criteria for earning Algebra 1 add-on endorsement set. That was one of our steps. And so that is what today, my presentation is more about that, but we're also required to add a geometry add-on endorsement, which we didn't have that before. We already had an Algebra 1 add-on endorsement, but we are to modify it. You can see in that first bullet what we were to eliminate and to permit the candidates to have a passing score to add on the endorsement instead of taking some of the coursework. The reason why it's phrased that way is because in a lot of cases, we have you can do the coursework and then you still have to take the assessment if you're coming out of your EPP program, but this would allow a little bit different pathway for that. So whenever you do a fast track, it has to be non-controversial. We've had some fast tracks that are controversial. We've had some that are non-controversial. The definition for non-controversial is very interesting. It's about how many people complain when you post it on town hall, or how many comments you get, how many requests you get. It also can be a certain level of people. If they say, no, this seems too controversial, and then you can no longer do a fast track. We have made it through part of this process already. This is scheduled to go on the board agenda this week, because we've made it past that point. So the next step for us as a group is we've done the steps that we needed to get it to the board. The board will decide if they want to take it and first and final it on Thursday, or will they want to listen to it, think about it, and then bring it back in April. So we could be anywhere from a couple days away from this being live to a little bit more than that. There is a waiting period after the board decides their side, and we'd have to do that waiting period, and then we would be going live. Let me go to the next one. So I'm going to click out of the presentation and show you this document. It's hyperlinked here for you so that when you get this presentation, you'll have access to this document also, but I wanted you to see the changes. Okay. Sharing. And then pull up the document. That's not where to go. This way. Right here. Yep. Full screen.
Share your screen.
Okay. No. There we go. So this has pop up. This is the language that will be taken out of the regulations. The controversial part wasn't this part down here at the bottom. Part with the coursework, that was explicitly stated in the legislation. So we didn't have any real difficulty in deciding what happened there. We did want to make sure that by removing some of these courses, we weren't also removing other content that other universities were embedded from other parts in those courses. But that part's easy. The harder part was deciding if we left it at 24 minimum hours, but we took away half of the courses to choose from, in essence, we were requiring math students to take unnecessary courses to just get to 24, even though the language said you didn't need these courses. But if we didn't change that from 24 to 12, but that was not part of the original legislation. So we had to, that's why we're doing this process. So the next steps will be, instead of it being, is it too small? Because I can make it bigger. Is it fine back there? Bigger, please? Okay. Freak you out a little? Yeah. So that yellow line, that's the magical line that's, if anything's controversial about this, that's the only controversial thing, is the legislators didn't specifically say lower it from 24 to 12, but in essence, they took away so many of the courses you couldn't get to 24. You'd have to lower it to 12. Yep. So are there any questions about where it stands now? With Thursday, it'll be presented to the board. Jim Chapman will be making this presentation. I'll be there for questions, but Jim Chapman will be presenting this and a few of our other legislative changes that we've been working on in here.
Thank you, my bill. So just let me know if there's a problem
Okay.
that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Because if we do something and it's not right, I don't mind going back. Because I mean, the intention was the micro credential, wasn't to like change all credentials.
Right.
So just let me know if we mess something up.
And that's why this could be considered controversial, because Algebra 1 now only requires 12 hours. Other add-ons, would we all say all of them should only be 12, which we wouldn't, because you specifically said these courses were elevated to a level above Algebra 1, making them unnecessary to be able to teach Algebra 1. That's what I believe that the intent of the law was, because those courses that we removed were all well above Algebra 1 in the math strata. And so it won't, I don't believe it'll create a controversy, but if it could create a controversy, that's where it would be. It would be like, let's say we wanted to just have a biology add-on endorsement only. And maybe in the regular biology requirements, you have some chemistry, you might even have some physical science, you might have some other things. And if the legislators say, well, you don't need all those courses, and then they don't change the total number, then we're back doing this again. We'd need to take into account the number of hours that would remain after taking away course requirements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe you and I can talk.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So there are already some micro-credentials in place. Now, you mentioned this as a micro-credential. This technically isn't in the line. It's a replacement. It's a low threshold endorsement. By that, I mean some endorsements allow you to teach a whole broad spectrum of courses. This endorsement is intended to target just Algebra 1 teachers, primarily because of the middle school math movement, because we don't have enough Algebra 1 teachers in middle school, and they don't necessarily need to be able to teach calculus, pre-calculus, all those other courses. So the course requirements were shrunk down to only target the skills you need to be an Algebra 1 teacher. So it's a low threshold change. It's not really a micro-credential in the sense that you just do some side work and then you get a credential for that. This is it's still a full credential. It doesn't go down as a micro, it just goes down as an endorsement with a low threshold of focus.
Clarity.
Mhm.
Michael,
Mhm, mhm.
it's an endorsement area called that.
Well, we,
Looking at,
mhm, mhm.
he doesn't necessarily have a handle yet on it. And what we don't want to happen is with the public,
Mhm.
then we start with some terminology that's not clear. It's not like you can work the program now. So I would say, well, an endorsement, just say endorsement,
Mhm.
and we got terminology like mine. So there will be.
Mhm. And this actually came up with VLA. So when the reading specialist micro-credential was added so that you could get a 5-year endorsement as a reading specialist, as an agency, we created a micro-credential to meet that. And that is because the way the law said, it said it needed to be a micro-credential, which in essence, it really just needed to be a, not temporary, a provisional endorsement, which was also a new thing, because we don't have any provisional endorsements. All of our endorsements are for life. So that fix to try to get more reading specialists for VLA created a micro-credential that was actually in turn to design for a endorsement as a reading specialist and I'll say faster way to get some people into the field to fulfill the VLA requirements.
Here.
In the law, it talks about a micro-credential for reading specialists, which a reading specialist before that was a master's level, high level endorsement that took it was pretty hard to attain, but we needed reading specialists immediately.
We were looking at the VLA, because we wanted to kind of bring that energy to that. And so that might be part of it. And yeah, I think it's part of the micro. For us, it's the 40s. How we interpret it.
Right. And there's other micro-credentials that don't lead to an endorsement. Like there's a micro-credential for computer science, and there's a micro-credential for, what is it for? You remember what the other one is? I'll think of it in a second, but it may be, no, gifted, for gifted. Because there's not a formalized requirement for an endorsement for gifted, there had to be something to qualify people to be gifted teachers. And just like there wasn't a formal requirement to be a computer science person in your school, there was a micro-credential created for that. And so the term micro-credential is thrown around a little bit without a firm definition for it. And that's something that this group could make a recommendation, and we define those things. Yes.
But micro-credential is not defined in the statute.
No. And to be honest, most things aren't defined in the statutes like you would think they would be defined. Like there's not a definition for teacher. There's a definition for what teachers have to have through their licensure requirements. There's even a definition for some of the things a teacher does, but there's not a definition for what makes a teacher. And I just bring that up because we have like our not teachers for their national board. National board is now for teachers. It also added staff, and it also added a few other things, people that are in progress to get their stuff, get their national board, or people who are going to extend. And so there became a little bit of a controversy. Okay, who counts as a teacher? Does a librarian count as a teacher? The old definition for national board was teach what, at least 50% of the time, right? Well, you could argue a librarian in elementary might teach 80 or 90% of the time, and you might argue that a librarian in high school may not have a classroom all day, but they are still teaching, but it's not in a classroom setting because it refers to the word like a classroom teacher. So there's not a firm definition even for teacher that we can just latch on to and say, this is what in Virginia it means to be a teacher. There's people that do support positions that some people think are as teachers and some people don't think of as
Because, we're coming towards the end of the school year,
teachers.
then, we won't have meetings again maybe until August. But
Correct.
this is something I think we need to go ahead and have a conversation about in our next meeting. If we need to meet in May, so there can be some definites moving forward.
I definitely think that it is a good topic for us to discuss. Andy?
For EPPs that have this program, how long will they have to adjust their programs?
So that'll be the board, we'll give guidance to the board of what we would recommend as like a grandfathering in or a implementation window. That's, if you look at the actual board agenda documents, there's always the spot at the bottom that talks about implementation and timing. And so we will make sure that we include that in there, and we try to be logical, because like when we had that one test that was about to expire, we needed to expedite that. But if we don't have something that's about to expire, more grace in the time is definitely appropriate. Any other questions about this topic? This is really just to give you a heads up, but it turned into a kind of little rich topic there. All right, I'm gonna shut this off, and their next presenter is on our geometry praxis assessment, Miss Vicky Bohidar, and she's gonna correct me. I probably pronounced her name wrong, but okay, Bohidar. There we go. I'm gonna bring up her presentation and take mine down. Is that all right?
Share, it's not. Oh, no, it's good. Sorry.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Are you ready? Thank you.
Sure. So we are going to chat just briefly about the geometry praxis assessment and how that aligns to our Virginia standards of learning, kind of piggybacking on the conversation that Rob just set the stage with the algebra. We are looking at potentially using this as part of a fast track for the geometry endorsement as well. So we'll look at the geometry praxis test at a glance. We will look at that alignment to the Virginia standards of learning. We'll do a little bit of comparison to other tests and just talk in general about the conclusion. So the geometry praxis test at a glance, the font is kind of small to see up there, but essentially it is a 50-question assessment that takes just over 2 hours, and content is broken down into 2 content categories. As we think about how this aligns, I think the screen share, we're not seeing it.
It's okay.
You're seeing it on Zoom, right? Yes, which is what's important. And I apologize that you can't see this, but will they receive the slides as well? Okay. No, it is moving, but it's showing on the screen in a different way than it is on Zoom. So
There to view Zoom.
we could just, do you want to keep going? Or
Okay.
are you okay?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. All right. So in general, the geometry praxis is designed to assess that competency in geometry for beginning teachers. It is noted that typically the test takers for this assessment have completed that bachelor's program with an emphasis on math or math education. The test is not designed to align with any specific set of standards for states in general. So it was not designed to align specifically to the Virginia standards of learning, but it was designed to be consistent with the recommendations from NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and with CATE, the Council of Accreditation for Educator Preparation. This is a breakdown just in general where you can see that each of the skill categories that is noted on the left is one of the skill categories on the geometry praxis assessment. And on the right, you can see that each of those skill categories does align with one or more of our Virginia Standards of Learning. So this highlights the properties of geometric plane shapes, congruence, proof, and constructions. You can see that those all do align. You can see that in the area of similarity, proof, and trigonometry, we have that alignment as well, where each item that is included with the praxis assessment does align to Virginia standards. Similarly, for coordinate geometry and for circles, we have that alignment where the content that's included on the praxis test is embedded within our standards. It's not a nice one-to-one correlation because our standards in geometry are really meaty and they kind of are spread out in different areas, but there is that alignment across the board, along with three-dimensional geometry and geometric modeling. You can see the alignment there as well. It is noted that all skills that are assessed on that geometry praxis assessment do connect back to Virginia Standards of Learning, standards for geometry. However, it doesn't work completely in reverse with that alignment. There is one geometry standard of learning, SOL, that's not addressed within the context of the geometry praxis assessment, and that is our GRLT1, which is the reasoning lines and transformations first standard that asks the students to translate logic statements, identify conditional statements, and use and interpret Venn diagrams. It's important to note that this one is not embedded anywhere within the geometry praxis assessment. It's also important to note that that standard is a standard that is relatively unique to Virginia. The Common Core state standards do not address that content as part of their geometry standards, and there are not other states that have that explicitly as a standard for geometry mathematics courses. It is kind of touched on in the standards for mathematical practice within Common Core, which would be much like our mathematics process goals. I'm also going to highlight that I had several conversations with mathematics supervisors from divisions around the state and had conversation around, is there concern whether this is there or not? And I think universally, everybody is saying that that is a piece that even when we think about our high quality instructional materials and textbooks, that's a standard that's not explicit there. So as an agency, we have done a lot of work to support divisions in supporting teachers around this standard. So there are a lot of resources that we have put out to support teachers instructing this in their classrooms. When we think about how the geometry test matches with the Algebra 1 praxis test, you can see that they're similar. The geometry test is slightly shorter. The algebra test has 10 additional questions, and the time frame, of course, is a little bit longer for completing that assessment. The algebra test does have their standards broken, or their skills broken down into 3 separate areas, whereas geometry just has the 2 subsets. It's noted that all of the algebra skills that are assessed on the Algebra 1 praxis align with Virginia Standards of Learning, and it works in reverse with the Algebra 1 as well. All of the Algebra 1 Standards of Learning do map back to content that is covered within the Algebra 1 praxis assessment. The Algebra 1 praxis assessment doesn't focus as heavily on technology verification of solutions and contextual modeling for explanations as the Virginia Standards of Learning does, but the content itself is embedded with very thorough cross connections between the 2. The conclusion is that the geometry praxis assessment should adequately assess the mathematical knowledge and competencies necessary for a beginning teacher in Virginia. Questions? Yes.
So if I were to, I would probably want to look at what your research test is offering to be able to match up with what I'm supposed to, what the expectations are for my job in that particular class. Does your presentation of this offer that information to someone trying to assess what they would gain from taking this class in terms of meeting those standards for Virginia's guidelines?
So I think going back to like these slides that show the alignment piece, It doesn't map it in both directions. It's showing the content from the praxis assessment and where that matches to each of our individual standards of learning. We do have a note, which I didn't include in this presentation, that maps it in reverse. And it does show that there is that one standard that's not aligned. Does that answer your question?
They are.
If they took this test,
This test,
it's just the test.
they would then be. What?
If they demonstrated mastery after taking this test, then yes.
Then they are.
They should be adequately prepared to teach geometry in the state of Virginia.
Overall.
Yes, if they're showing the passing score on this, I would say yes, that does demonstrate that.
But you're saying that not having addressed each of the requirements that Virginia.
There is one standard which we break down, which is really focusing on logic statements and interpreting Venn diagrams. That is not addressed within the Praxis 1 or the geometry praxis test. That standard, we won't know exactly whether teachers have that competency or not because it's not assessed on that particular test. But that is a standard that most folks have experience with Venn diagrams from other experiences in their lives, like that comes naturally. But that's a standard that's not included in many high-quality instructional material textbooks as well. So the resources that are provided to teachers from the VDOE, from the agency, are very robust in that area. So even if they did not have competency with that one particular standard, they could use the resources that are provided to understand. I think that most folks that would be demonstrating competency on the larger test as a whole would definitely have the ability to be able to use the resources to teach that. Yeah.
The algebra one test has that skill.
No, that skill is not embedded anywhere else. It is one that is really about symbolic notation, and Virginia is unique in calling that skill out as a separate standard for our students.
And just clarity in case people weren't sure what this is all about. This assessment is geared towards.
You go to the microphone, please. Thank you. I think the microphones are.
We used to have the microphone. This assessment and this whole process is so that people that aren't math teachers, that are probably middle school teachers, like a science teacher in middle school, could take this assessment and qualify to teach geometry in middle school. That's the intent. It doesn't have to be science. It's just science and math tend to pair with each other really well. It's not the intent for this person to bypass all the other maths and just get a job just being a math teacher only. This is an add-on endorsement to someone who already has a license, already in a subject area, preferably something where they do have some balance in math, because if they didn't, they probably wouldn't pass this test anyway.
And I think that in many cases, we're looking at elementary or middle grade teachers that are certified K6 or K8 that would be looking to add on either the algebra endorsement that Rob just talked about, or the geometry endorsement, or both, so that they could teach the broad spectrum of mathematics courses in a middle school setting. It's not looking at a broad secondary mathematics certification. It's really just getting that certification to be able to teach our middle school students in an accelerated pathway. Yes.
And for that resource that those individuals looking to acquire this as an endorsement, that it's labeled highlighted somewhere. This is where you could focus on this particular call out, you would, so they can actually prepare themselves and then be able to teach it, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the resources exist, the practice manuals or books like that. And I think that in most cases, somebody that's looking to do this is already teaching mathematics or potentially science, is already teaching something in an elementary or middle grade and would be looking to expand that. So they would know what they would be, looking to teach eventually. Yes.
one thing she wanted to know is she's gonna have to go back to math courses. She's already going to my grade, so she's already kind of coming in teaching algebra classes. So, she just needs to know she's gonna have, she knows that she'll be class, because she has to take the courses with her. Any additional.
So when I'd had my presentation a few minutes ago was over Algebra 1. And if you might remember that there was at one point 24 courses, 24 hours for courses, and it's going to be brought down to 12. So they would still need to do those 12 courses, but they would not have to do the full 24 spectrum once this all went through.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just looking to that exception that's not covered in practice. And you said it's also not in the textbooks. So do they know that they need to be covering this? And knowledgeable of it?
Yes, I think our teachers do recognize that, teachers as a whole recognize that it's not a page by page process through a textbook, that they are responsible for teaching the standards. And most of our divisions do a great job as well with division resources to support with their pacing and everything. So that would be reflected in those. Yes.
So wouldn't it be that if a teacher had a full license and they took this test, to add geometry to that license?
Correct.
Without any coursework?
Well, that's not what I'm speaking of here. I think that is still yet to be determined what that additional.
That if you have license and say you take the English classes, you pass it, English is added to your existing license.
Yes, that is correct. Currently, under the way we do add-on endorsements. And there are some add-on endorsements that have different qualifications. So basically, the secondary ones are the ones that are the easiest to just take an assessment and add on the ones. The middle and elementary ones, some of those require other aspects to be added to them. Mhm.
The practice is your subject matter of class work. So that satisfies it. Is that gonna change, Rob? Where if 12 credits pass, they still have to take a coursework within the practice?
That's the way the legislation's written, so that's the way we'll follow it.
That's pretty good.
Over somebody who's an English major could take the praxis in math, pass it, and be able to teach all of math, including calculus and algebra 1.
Absolutely. So it's kind of paradoxical in a way. If you don't want to have to add any hours, you just take the harder test and it covers so much more. And then you're qualified to teach not just algebra, but many courses. But if you're only shooting for the algebra,
Conceivably, for anything. Behind the ball.
just following the law, just following the law. Any other questions for our speaker?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Dr. Williams, right?
Yes. Not Dr. Williams, but our rock star from CTE, Kelly Davis, is in the room. Kelly, if you would come forward, I'm going to get your presentation ready. Let's see. Grab the other glasses. Always have two pair of glasses. That's the rule, right?
No.
Mhm. CT. Yep. All right, I'm going to try and do it this way first. Oh, it doesn't do it that way. All right, let's not do it that way. Well, that was my presentation.
Oh.
Looks
like this.
It's not sharing though yet, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, is it going? What if I just enlarge it? You think that'll do it?
No, because then we're seeing.
Yeah, clicky, clicky.
I gotta click.
Clicky. I like that.
Mhm. Yo.
Just give it a second, it's thinking.
There it is.
Yeah, but I'm seeing the presenter, it's because it's picking up two screens.
Do I need to close the screen? Let's close.
So ladies and gentlemen, while we're in our transition, please note we'll have a career and technical education update from Kelly Davis in the Office of Career and Technical Education.
All right.
Sure is nowhere Dr. Lance might be there. All right, Drew.
We good?
Uh-huh. Is your intro here?
Click through and we'll figure this out. Might not want to sit down till I get,
You can use that.
okay. I was like, okay, brought this. So as mentioned, I'm not Dr. Williams. I am Kelly Davis. I'm the Associate Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Innovation in the Office of Career and Technical Education. And I am delighted to be here in his place today. He regrets that he can't be here, but he's at a VCCS meeting that he was mandated to attend. So I got to come today and present to you all. So as a caveat, before we get going too far, he pretty much fields all the licensure questions. So when we get too deep into your questions, I'm going to have to write those down and then take those back to the hive and get you answers later. So do that. So I kind of wanted to give a background. Some of you guys are very familiar with career and technical education, but we like to kind of say, you know, give you a background so you know that what you're dealing with when you're dealing with our office, because it's just really can be very complex. We deal with a lot of CTE administrators across the state that wear many hats, you know, and they come into our program and or they may not have even really volunteered for it. And they're like, oh, we're adding CTE to you. So we have a lot of people that we're constantly keeping educated on things, and you learn something new every day. And I'm going to tell you, I've been here 10 years, over 10 years now, and I learn something every day about our office and all of the different programs we have. So this is not to like dummy down CTE for you, but just to kind of give you some context. So one of the things that we're going through, like before we had 17 career clusters, there was 16 in the model, but Virginia added energy through regulation. And so now the National Career Cluster have been redone. They call it the modern, which seems to me like outdated terminology, but that is our modern framework. It's 14 clusters of 72 career clusters. And these are basically taking occupations and trying to align them by groupings. One of the things when I show you the next slide, you might, if you were familiar with the previous career clusters, you might say, where is STEM? That was like everyone's first question. Where did STEM go? And STEM is actually embedded in every career cluster. That's the recognition of why that was done. But they rolled this out last year. We are slowly aligning to this internally. I mean, if we could just do it in CTE, it had already been done, but we have to be in lockstep with other programs. VOE, for example, VCCS. I mean, there's a lot of things across the board, other things that are outside of us where we have to work to align to get that work done. But we will be public forward facing on everything next year. So we're gradually getting there. Behind the scenes, we've got it. It's just trying to flip that switch. Okay. So the framework, this is the grid view. There is this round circle view that you'll see a lot, but it's really hard to see without turning your head a lot. So we've come up with this grid view. But they've taken these groupings and they've come up with like 6 big groupings. And so if you're familiar with our academic and career plans, so a lot of this grouping would be the type of thing you might do at the elementary level, where you're just, you know, trying to get the big hunks of things to talk to kids. And then as you move up through the middle school and high school, you'll get more into the actual 14 career clusters. So I won't bore you with that today, but when you get your slides, you will have this in color. The other thing that we are very aligned with is labor market data. So whenever a school division wants to add a course, a CTE course, through regulation, they must justify it through student interest and labor market data. So we work with Walden Cooper Center of UVA, Wahoo although we lost last night. So, throwing it out there. It was brutal. My bracket's gone. But Walden Cooper does this work for us. And so we have the CTE Trailblazers is a website that anyone can go to, but our division leaders definitely rely on this for providing that type of justification. So we have a new course application process where they will send in their new course application that says, here's our labor market data that supports it, and here's our student interest that also supports it, that then we can approve it. Notably, one of the items on there is for them to tell us what is the endorsement of the teacher that's you're planning to hire for this. So we can double check at this point that they understand that we're all on the same page about who may or may not teach this particular course. And I just mentioned the Virginia Office of Education Economics, BOE. We're currently, if you're following anything on the 3E and so forth, we're highly aligned to high demand occupations. So we're starting to see everything that we do through a new lens, okay? Not that we haven't always talked about occupations, but now we're at the high demand and we're trying to align things. If you followed our credential list of our industry recognized credentials that go before the board, there's now a new designation that allows people to know whether or not that particular credential is aligned to a high demand occupation. So more and more, you'll start seeing this terminology come out through all of our work. So then we have the high quality work-based learning. This has been revolutionary to our school divisions as far as redefining this. So the board came up with a new definition for what work-based learning. Before we had 12 experiences across the board. While they still exist, there are 6 that are focused that are considered the high quality that will meet either the 3E framework, the employment part of the 3E framework, or for the graduation requirements. And so this is where school divisions are currently having to submit to us through this board approved document, this guidance document. It has tapped our office to certify these experiences as being high quality work-based learning, which is an overwhelming responsibility and job task right now without, you know, with those unfunded mandates, without adding more personnel to help. So those, the 6, if you, of course you can read registered apprenticeships, and people ask, where did youth registered apprenticeships go? They're still there. It's just one term that is the umbrella for both experiences. And then we have clinical experiences, which are finite, you know, very limited to our health and medical sciences courses, entrepreneurship, school-based enterprises, and then select immersion agricultural experiences, and then internships. So we also have, as part of our structure in CTE, is career and technical student organizations. And again, this is showing this is coming through regulation as well, that says that if you're a high school, you must have these programs, these career and technical student, or the opportunity for students to join must be there. So we're looking at that whenever we're reviewing programs as well. Middle school, it's recommended, but everything we do with career and technical student organizations is co-curricular. It is written into all of our frameworks and our for our courses, our course content. And then here's our different ones that we have. You might be familiar with these either through your own experience, your family's experience, or if we've tapped you to be a judge at any of our state leadership conferences. And if we haven't, you can see me later and sign up. We'd love to have. And then we would talk about participation. So I wrote this down because there was not a total on this slide. I meant to put that on there, but you will see that we organize our office by program areas. So we have a specialist for each one of these programs, except for trade and industry, which we are industrial education, which we are currently in the hiring process for, but we're on a little stall here. But we are forever hopeful for filling that position, because right now I'm getting to do a lot of that work. So I'm forever hopeful. So anyway, when you add this up, you come up to 522 courses. So whenever you talk about being able to have a teacher come in, it's not like you just get, we have 7 different endorsements because we have 7 program areas. It's very complex once you get past that. And one of the data points I don't have today, but I was sitting back there thinking was, I wonder how many endorsements we do have. A lot. So you'll see that we have what we call unduplicated. We have 270,000, over 270,000 students participate in middle and high school programs, but then duplicated, meaning that these students are enrolled in more than one CTE course. We have upwards of 687,000 students involved in our programs. And then we have this is comes through our Perkins Act that says you must survey your students a year after they graduate. I'd love to see the longer period of time. 5 years is a lot of kids just haven't made a whole lot of decisions, but we can at least see where they're pointed when they do leave our programs. And you might find it surprising that 68% of them are enrolled in post-secondary. I don't know how many of them stay. You know, that's a number that we have trouble with that because we can't track by their social security numbers. So some states have cracked that code. I think there's a lot out there working now to try to be able to find that, to be able to mine that information as well. And then 20 of them go into employment, 6% part-time, 1% out of the labor force, 1% unemployed, and then 4% enter into the military. All right, so this is where we get into the teacher part. So you can see here that we have approximately unduplicated teachers. We nearly 7,000 CTE teachers across the state that are teaching multiple courses. And you can see it by program area. Business and information technology is out there in the front with number of teachers that we have. And then when you start into like trade and industrial, while there might only be 331 of those, we sure wear out licensure with those, trying to get those teachers to have a license. So this by no means represents how complex anything is by the number of teachers. Okay, so we have technical professional endorsements in 2 of our areas, agricultural education and in trade and industrial education. And so when we do get in front of CTE administrators, we have a conference in the fall that's VACTEA, which is the Virginia Association of Career and Technical Education Administrators, and anyone is welcome to come. This is where we go over everything from A to Z. And we have like sessions for new CTE administrators, and then we have one in the summer as well. But whenever we get in front of them, we start talking about best practices, because you may even get a veteran CTE administrator who is completely in the dark about what to do with one of their trade and industrial or even their nurse aide program, because they've had a veteran there for years and that person retires. So it's just not something they do every day. So it's almost like learning new all the time. So one of the things we talk about is to review the CTE endorsement in detail. There is an endorsement regulation for each one of our 7 CTE programs. So that's if a teacher sends something to us or something like that, the first thing we do is say, you know, here's the regulation so you can review it yourself. Now, please go back and talk with your licensure specialist in your school division. So that was the next thing, consult with your human resources or your licensure. So you also want to, before they advertise for these jobs, that's where we also want them to go and speak with their human resources office before they release job vacancies to make sure that they don't end up getting someone very excited and get them up to a certain point, and then we're able to provide them with a license. And then we also have a credentialing requirement for initial licensure. So we always say, make sure that you're reviewing that teacher eligible credential list that's posted on our website, and then review annually to make sure if there's any updates that they're staying up to speed on that. And then obviously to attach detailed evidence to their application when they're sending that in, because sometimes we have to go back and ask for more information. So I'm going to go over real quickly. This is our agricultural education technical professional license. And for ag, you do have to, number 4, have completed an ag certificate or an associate degree in the teaching specialty sought. But number 2, you have to completed 2 years of successful full-time or equivalent of occupational experience within the last 5 years in the teaching specialty sought. So that is the, if you're going for the technical professional license under ag. Now, ag also has the, your other professional licenses opportunities for, but there are some courses that you're going to need this for. Like you can't necessarily teach ag mechanics without going through and having some certification and some background in welding and so forth. Trade and industrial education is probably where we talk the most with the licensure office, and we have a very close relationship with the licensure office, and we get together all the time. They send us the background, the resumes and so forth, and we identify these candidates and try to help where we can by providing that clarity. So number 2, again, they have to have a current license or be currently certified as a professional practitioner in the area. So this is where you get your journeymans, and so forth like that, your ASE certifications and things. And then number 3 is evidence of at least 2 years of successful full-time or the equivalent occupational experience within the past 5 years. So what do you do with a candidate that has it in the last 6 years or 7 years? And those are the things where you have to really start digging into their experience to see what exactly have they done? What does their resume say? Where is there perhaps maybe a difference in the way we're interpreting the words that we can help them get past? So this is where we work very closely with the licensure office to try to see where that is. And sometimes they just flat out don't meet it and there's nothing we can do because it's regulation, right? We sympathize with the school divisions and we're like, we got it, but that was 10 years ago and it clearly states 5. We don't have the ability to go, 6 is good enough, very close. We don't, it's just in black and white here. But then there are, you'll notice it says candidates whose occupational experience has not been within the last 5 years shall participate in supervised technical update related to the teaching specialty of area endorsement or complete supervised internship or work experience of not less than 6 weeks related to the area of endorsement or teaching specialty. This gets really complex. And so this is very much a case-by-case basis. So you might like picture, who are we talking about? Maybe it's a guy that had his own shop and he was like auto repair shop and he's had that for years and now he's closing the doors and he'd like to come teach, or he keeps it open. He's got other people running it and he would like to come teach. Those are the types of teachers that we're looking at quite often, and they bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and everything to the job. So we are very interested in having these individuals, fulfill all the requirements. And they also have to, in addition to being able to provide that evidence that they're good at their trade, through their certification, they also have to, in order to become fully licensed, go through the professional studies as well. So they're responsible for that.
Does that include a college degree or just some coursework?
For T&I, for the technical professional, we are not requiring the college degree. Now, speaking of before, when we were talking about something very finite, if I have let's say that I'm an automotive technician endorsement, that's all I'm going to be teaching. So, and it can get kind of hard for school divisions because auto programs, typically you can fill those up. But if you end up with something that's very niche, it's hard for them to hire someone that has that technical professional license unless they can provide them with a full-time teaching position. So a lot of times they're like, well, what else can they teach? I need to fill something in. Why can't they teach this? And those endorsements have different requirements. Health and medical, I don't even know how many endorsements we have in health and medical, but I'd say it's probably more than 10. We do have some that are more broad that can teach like intro, and they can teach medical terminology and so forth, but you may get into some that are extremely specific that aren't going to be able to teach that. We have the allied health, business and information technology. When I have a background in business and information technology, that was my endorsement. You can teach almost anything that we have, all the courses that we have. Like it spans everything without limitation. So when I get to a school division, they can be very flexible with their programming if they have me as a teacher. And we provide a lot of professional development. For example, we just finished creating artificial intelligence courses. We have 2 AI courses that's going to be a sequence of business, and we haven't gotten to the licensure part, but we are thinking that perhaps a teacher with a business and information technology endorsement would be able to teach that course. I, as a business and information technology endorsed teacher, would not be able to teach that course without going through some professional development. You know, we have to be able to support these teachers and keep them fresh and moving forward so that they can keep up with our technology, because it may have been years and years since they were in college and had that training. So professional development becomes really huge with our office. So speaking of trade and industrial education, so in addition to that, for some of our endorsements, the ones that are here on your screen, they require that the teacher have OSHA certification, and these certifications have to be updated every 4 years. And so we also provide that professional development. We do some of it through the summer conferences, but most recently we've been, because so many things have now gone virtual, there's a lot of virtual courses. So we're now buying, what is the word? What I'm looking for, but vouchers. We buy vouchers with the provider so that the school division can come and get those. We were running into a problem with school divisions would hire someone after the summer conference, but then they would get them on and they're like, I can't get my teacher to meet the requirements. So this was kind of us going back. It's like, how can we meet that need? And the vouchers were set up to do that for the new teachers. Well, what the first year we found out is like a lot of existing teachers were using our vouchers. So then we had to buy more. So, because we didn't want to not support them as well, you know, but it was just the need was originally identified for these programs that needed something off cycle. And then we celebrate, we always do a little shout out. We celebrate our career success stars, and these are in our 14 clusters. And we have these great videos, and so that the school divisions can use these to help promote the programs. And then our students, there is a CTE Presidential Scholars that goes along with the General Presidential Scholars. And we also have distinguished high school seniors that receive these awards as well. And then we have Creating Excellence Awards each June, where the school divisions will put forth their business partners, their student programs, all kinds of things to get these awards, and then we celebrate them each year with that. And this is at the state level. Obviously, locally, this is done throughout the Commonwealth. And then we have all of our CTE memos. So this is the guidance that we put out to school divisions. And this one, we've updated as of January, but we've put out probably 10 or 15 since then. Anything that has to do with CTE that goes to the administrators comes through this. Things that rise up to the need to be in an article, get there as well. And that's my presentation. So I don't know if you have questions that are specific to licensure you haven't asked, but I'd be glad to try to entertain those. Yes.
So about a year ago, I was asked to participate in this agriculture education related cluster thing. And it seemed like some schools were having trouble getting agriculture CTE teachers credentialed, and they wanted for you all to have like specialists in credentialing agriculture CTE areas. Like they felt like they were specialists who didn't know about agriculture working on their credentialing. Have you all made some improvements, or have you moved things around, or do you already have those?
So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we had a work group, a very sizable work group with a really diverse representation, meet several times over the fall that produced a report for recommendation consideration. And that is definitely something that was in it. And what she's speaking to is that they feel like ag can be very complex, and It's different. Yeah, they're different. And so some of the coursework, I believe, like it may not at the title level look like it checks this box, but if you dive into it, it may even be higher or more rigorous or something like that. And they were looking for, one of the recommendations was to have like an ag, someone that specialized just on ag with your staff. So we can certainly share that report with you. We have not started our work with that. I don't know what happened, but January was like yesterday, wasn't it? So we're working on that. We're also working on a technology and engineering education strategic report as well. And they certainly are challenged with hiring tech ed teachers as well. A lot of the programs, ag, thank goodness, Virginia Tech is still a huge supporter of creating ag teachers. But some of our other programs that we had counted on to provide the like technology and engineering education prep programs to have teachers come straight out of college had dried up, but now they're coming back. So we're happy for that. I know like ODU is like, bring us more. How can we get the word out there so that students will do that? I had the opportunity, I felt like last weekend, but I guess it's been a couple weekends ago, to be at the Educators Rising conference, and that is our CTSO for our Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow. And that's one of the things that we also want to continue to promote, that that's not just for CTE, obviously, but obviously, like even tech ed teachers, we were talking to them, they're like, oh, I didn't know that we could do that for Teachers for Tomorrow as well. So we need to continue to do that. One of the recommendations that came out of that group, which hasn't been published yet, was for us, we have the first 38 competencies of every course are the same, and it goes over workplace readiness skills. What is it? The something across industry, all across industry skills, CTSOs, high quality work-based learning. So they're the same on all. One of the recommendations out of that was to promote the teacher profession for that particular CTE subject, in those courses. Excellent idea. I mean, I love these work groups because you just get some great ideas that'll come out to try to grow our own.
Send us those reports.
Yes. Okay, we can definitely do that. It's one of those CTE memos, but I'll make sure that he gets it for the ag one where that went out, and then,
Ag report now?
Yeah, it came out in January through a CTE memo, but I will make sure that Rob gets it so that this group can have that as well.
The work groups get it too, because it wasn't released to the work group.
It went through email, you didn't get it?
No.
Okay. Love these opportunities. Let's go back and make sure that happens. Okay, work group.
We're just now beginning to offering the free courses for the CTE folks. We're just doing that this summer. But I saw in one of your slides that it was the human growth and development, the curriculum instruction, and then it was an either or between the technology and classroom management. Is that for all endorsements? The either or for the classroom management and the
Class applications of instructional technology or class. So this one's going to be specific to our TNI, I believe. And then let's see if ag has that. Yeah, so it's TNI.
It's ag, it was just number 3.
Oh, it's number 3. Oh, I see. Yes. Huh? But the two.
Yes, it's the number change.
And that's for all.
All the technical professional licenses.
Yeah, because we're offering those 3 this summer. But I didn't know we could do the either or for instructional technology, classroom, and everything. That's a neat.
You're offering the CPE here, but I'm glad for making note.
I'm glad they're here to answer that question. Anybody else? Okay, great. Thank you for your time, and I will get those reports out.
Thank you so much.
That's yours, right?
Okay. Perfect. Okay,
Look, I have a pen in my hand and to yours.
there you go. Oh, no. Have yours already pulled up? This is the right one, correct? John L., is this the right one for you? Okay.
Not sharing.
I don't share with you. Sharing. This wish it was a little bit more intuitive. Maybe I'm not intuitive. Now we good? Okay. This is Dr. John L. Forward. He's our teacher education director. He's going to talk about critical support.
Speaker?
Like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Dr. Jonelle Torbert. Today I will be going over the critical shortage areas for 2027. So annually, Virginia has to identify our critical shortage areas for our teaching areas for the department. The methodology that we use is Virginia's ranking of critical shortage areas derived from an aggregated assessment of two indicators: the total number of unfilled teaching positions statewide and the number of teaching positions filled by licensed teachers who are teaching outside of their area. Once we identify those critical shortage areas, we have to report them to the USDOE. They are also reported to VRS and the Virginia Board of Education. Within the Code of Virginia, the statutory alignment requires that Virginia identify the top teaching shortage areas based on data collected through our superintendent's annual survey of school divisions that are known as our PEC data. These designations are used to administer the Virginia Teaching Scholarship Loan Program. They are also used to support some of our grants that we have in the Office of Teacher Education. And they are also used to identify areas for retired teachers to come back and teach in the state of Virginia. For the 2026 year, the top critical shortage areas are special education, pre-K through 12, elementary education, pre-K through 6, middle education, 6 through 8, career and technical education, science secondary, English secondary, mathematics secondary, history and social science secondary, world languages K through 12, and English as a second language PK through 12. When we look at all of these areas, just as a note, when we talk about special education K through 12, we're talking about all the sub endorsement areas that fall under special education related to including adaptive, VI, all of those endorsements that fall under there. And the same with career and technical education. You have all of the sub endorsement areas that fall under that breakup. Just some highlights from the data from this year. We have some highlights that are encouraging for the state of Virginia. One, we reduced shortages were observed in elementary education from K to 6 and career and technical education. The overall number of full-time equivalent teaching positions increased by 1,529, representing an estimated of 1.5% growth for the academic year. So
that's encouraging. And so hopefully, next year we'll see even more of a breakdown of the decrease in, the vacancy areas. Questions? And this report is just for information only, and it will be, reported at, shared with the Virginia Board of Education as well.
We have one of these. Just wondering, do you have any insights as to why the numbers are trending in a good direction?
No, what I can guess, professionally, we have all these alternative routes that we currently that we have for the different endorsement areas. And we have some increased enrollment with our teacher ed programs and, across the state. So I could guess that is the reason why. And in addition to that, based off of the new way that we collect our data, it's supposed to be more specific than compared to the years past. So the hope is that with the new way that we're collecting the PAC data, that we will see a decrease, and with all the different initiatives and funding sources that are provided with school divisions and EPP, that there will be a decrease in the vacancies.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple questions about this to you all. Is that order messed up? Is it a bad order? Is there anything wrong with what you see up there? Trick question, isn't it?
And that's what the data sits in there, but
It also aligns pretty closely with the most teachers. Like the largest group of teachers that we have would be in special ed and elementary. So even if their vacancy rate was only 1%, 1% of like 50,000 would still maybe put you first. So when we see this, I used to be like, oh, man, why is special ed always at the top? Well, it's at the top because we got a lot of special ed teachers. And why is elementary always at the top? Well, we got a lot of elementary teachers. So the order to me isn't upsetting. The total would be upsetting if that would be the case. Because if we only had 10 vacancies in special ed and we only had 9 in elementary ed and everybody else was lower, it would still be 1 and 2, even though that doesn't indicate a problem necessarily. Yep.
So it almost might be helpful to know what is the most disruptive. Because, science, if you don't have science teachers from high school, like kids can't graduate, so.
It would also be helpful to know what percentage of those teachers are missing. So like, not the total number, but out of, let's say, theater, just off the cuff. No, let's go with ag.
yeah,
Let's say ag, and let's just say there's 300 ag positions. And they've got 100 vacancies. That's a 33% vacancy rate. But that won't get you on this list, because that's only 100 vacant spots. But boy, for ag, it's a problem. You see what I'm saying when I say the,
Is this Bowie data, or do you get to control this?
well, what do you mean by control?
Like, does Bowie calculate?
No, we calculate it based on our tech data.
Well, so if you did it by percentage, then.
It would change the list drastically.
So, yeah, there might be, for us, for example, 2 different versions, 3 different versions of the list based on how you scored it. You do it by percentage versus.
But we also report this information to the federal government. And the federal government generally has only the top 5, is that what they want normally?
5%, the federal government requires us to have a 5% cap that we have to report, unless you use a different methodology. And so because of the code of Virginia stipulates that Virginia has to identify the top 10 for this data. So we use a different methodology in order to get our top 10. So when we look at the overall number, it is over the 5%. That we've gotten, no, we haven't done those. But it's been, since we have the new system that we collect the data on, it has been, there was a significant difference from the way we were collecting before to how we're collecting now. Before we were under the 5%, but now we are not. However, we do have rationale why we need to identify the top 10.
Before you go after something, an unintended consequence of changing to my suggested idea. What does this critical shortage, Darnell, provide? It provides information that is then used for what?
It's used for Virginia Teaching Scholarship loan, it's used for VRS for retirees, that one week that we can identify to come back to teach in Virginia. It's used for, we use it for our big, our clinical faculty, grant.
So my point of that is, let's go back to the ag situation. We got 100 ag openings. And we put them at number 1 because they're 33%. And that's not real. I just made those numbers up. And we don't put elementary ed up there. Well, we may need 800 elementary teachers, but if they're not up there because the percentage is so low, we don't use that money to fill that. So it's got to be it's good information to know where the critical areas are, but it also, because there's finance tied to it, we don't want to shortchange filling a big opening spot.
And also for, loan forgiveness. Well, which is really good.
Right. And there's also one other thing. So to be a critical shortage area, you can also qualify, what's the other ways, John Al? By having a low percentage of applicants or a regional.
In a specific, area.
Right.
Region.
So ag teachers could get in there that way.
Yeah.
You have a question?
Is that one of the other reasons why you don't tease out the subgroups? Because the subgroup can skew the actual.
Absolutely. You could drop science all the way off there if you and only have like biology only, yeah.
One more quick question, does the teachers are hired on a provisional license, that's not, like, does that count as a license?
Yeah, they fill a spot with a legal license, yeah. All right, I'm going to click off this, and then we got my last presentation, and then we got a couple little decisions to make, and then we're about done. So just to give you guys excitement. Oh. All right. Keep on not knowing how to do this. Let's see. Let's go to the folder. Critical shortage. Planning dates. Thought I had a PowerPoint, but it's okay. I don't need a print. I don't need a PowerPoint too. Can you see that online? I didn't share it. Okay. Now can you see it online?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have here is the projected date for next year. But before I jump into that, I also want to mention a couple things. We have a couple members of our ABTEL board that will be cycling off after our next meeting, most likely. Some very, very important, highly influential, wonderful people. If you are one of those people, would you mind staying up for just a second? If you're cycling off this year. Back up.
You have to go to the microphone.
All right. That was for them more than me.
Okay.
It's going to be super, super hard to fill your shoes.
Can we just decide they can't go?
I'm trying to figure out a way to chain them to in the basement down here at DDOE so they can't, but that's not going to probably happen. So I say this also to let you know that we are posting the positions that are open. There are a few more positions that are open that the people just aren't here today, that they've stepped away and they're no longer part of ABTEL. And so we will be filling some of those over the next couple months. So our ABTEL board will look a little different come next year. We also don't have a representative for the Board of Education here yet, because they're going through some really dramatic changes right now. And so they just haven't assigned somebody to us yet, but that'll be also a case. You know, we had Ann Holton for a long time, and then Grace Creasy, and we haven't had anybody for a little bit. So that's another change that'll happen. But taking a look at some of our history of dates, you can see, I'm going to step away from the mic because I can see what I'm looking at a little better. Get the mic over here. For this year, you can see up there, we had one canceled meeting in November. This would be our 4th meeting, and April would be our 5th. 5 is our minimum requirement. We are allowed to go 6, but right now, my intention is the next one, April 20th, to be our last one. It'll be in person, but if for some reason I have to, or need to add another one, I will let you all know as soon as possible. And also let you know if that one can be virtual. I have to go and count again and see if that puts us over the virtual number. And then just so you can see some of the dates that we used in 24, 23, 22, just so you can kind of see where we all fall every time. And then the available dates, I made a list of available dates, and when I was looking for available, I was number one, trying to avoid holidays. And I was also looking at Board of Education meetings. I feel like I had another factor I was factoring in. General Assembly. It's going to be a shorter session, I believe, next year. So, but I still try to avoid that window just because I don't want our delegates and senators to feel like they cannot participate because they're spread too thin. So I avoided some of those dates. But still, there's still some of them on there, but we don't have to choose them. I have enough dates up here for us to have, you know, quite a few meetings, but we don't need more than 5. So I'm going to scroll up and show you my suggested dates. This does not have to go my way, but if you all just said, we don't care, do what you want, this is what it would be. I don't want you to do that, but if that's what you said, this is where I would go. So I have more than 5 up there. And I have the first one in August. And the only reason I have one in August is because sometimes we have things that really hit us hard in September that if we were able to build going into the September meeting, we could accomplish something. September tends to be like a background meeting and we don't really get a lot accomplished. Whereas if we went August, and I'm not saying that we need to go August, but I put a virtual next to that just in case we did decide to go virtual in August. I wouldn't have us go virtual like that. That'd be one or the other probably. So September 14th would be more in alignment with what we did this year. And we started the year off with a virtual meeting, pretty hot in September, and people are starting school and coming back from vacation. So I try to be as sensitive to that in September. And then I have an October date, a November date, a virtual December date, which would be one I would recommend if we do a December meeting because of the opposite reason. It's cold weather, people are about to go on vacation. Schools for those that are EPPs are letting out. So trying to avoid that a little bit. And then a little break to March 15th. And you might go, why would you take a big break there? Well, that's when the General Assembly is happening. So I'm trying to avoid having the General Assembly be part of the window. Doesn't have to be the case, but we did that this year mostly. And I think that it was helpful for our General Assembly. And then I have April 19th, and I have a star there because that would probably be that would either be the last one or an optional date at the end, because you know sometimes we go 5 and then we added a 6th one just in case something gets canceled. We already have one on the calendar that we can resort to, just like we have the May one for this year. So I'm going to pause for a second. You can have discussion about this. I'm not going to ask you to make a decision about it. And I will say this, let's say for some reason you cannot be here at our next ABTEL meeting. You should still let me know your preference and I will voice that for the whole group. If for some reason you can't make it to our next ABTEL meeting, I want you to be able to still have your voice heard in this decision, because it impacts us all.
What's
So
the asterisk for?
that would be an optional in case we had a
Oh.
cancellation we had to fill in.
That have to be the assumption that we start on the 17th.
Not necessarily, you could go September, October, November, December, March, and then have an off choice, well, that'd give you 5 in the middle.
But then you said in the past, you've done a 6th one.
We haven't attended a 6th one, we added a 6th one as a choice. Right, but we haven't actually done a 6th one, everybody else.
I'm saying, more realistic standpoint, even with that December and November situation, man, look at it, Mother Nature, what she did this year. April 19th may not be asked.
May not, it may not. There could be other reasons too, I mean, the cancellation in November wasn't Mother Nature. Wasn't Mother Nature, but you had a question about it. Yeah, Eric?
Oh, I was just gonna share my thoughts, but I don't want to interrupt someone else that has really important information. I support the last date being asterisk as a possible makeup, you know, that makes sense to me. I like personally to start in person to get to meet new people and folks, but yeah, I think this year we're gonna start virtual. I mean, it still works, but just my preference. And then finally, I mean, most people as educators are likely gearing up and going back to work in mid-August, but I do worry a little bit that that one might take a hit on availability if there's still summer vacation.
The March 15th, day and March 15th, before that is daylight savings time, and I know it doesn't impact everybody, but it does impact me, but throw me off schedule, so.
Maybe we should start that one at like 10 instead of 9.
March 14th is
We'll
daylight
just, we'll just
savings.
change the start time on that one so everyone can have a chance to recover. Any other questions or thoughts? I'm not asking for a vote on any of this today. I actually would caution against the vote today, because I just don't want to rush this decision.
I like the virtual meetings in September and December, just because that's a time when, you know, some people are doing their last minute travel.
Right.
One thing I'm curious, just looking at having a meeting in November, not a problem. 16th is the week before Thanksgiving break. So people could be cramming stuff, and trying to get it in before they're out for whatever break they have the following week. So moving that one a little earlier might make it easier.
If we move it 2 weeks earlier, it creates other problems. I'll just let you know. And it's a Monday before the week before Thanksgiving, but
Right.
yeah, but valid point.
I was gonna say, like a teacher, schedule, like a classroom teacher secondary, having the August one, or having it virtual is nice, because I don't necessarily have to take a day off. And I'm taking personal days, and I'm just going to already be here. And so like, it's kind of nice, and also having it before school starts, so maybe I can negotiate my way and say, kind of, okay, stuff. But I also appreciate the going in person was nice for the first meeting, because like, it was weird as a new person this year, to just like say hi, I'm training with.
Yeah, it's like, I can't write it. Oh, there, now I recognize it.
There it is.
Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, fuck that, because we're already in school. Those students on August 17th. But I noticed also, it used to be the first Monday. Now we moved towards the second, and almost the third
Or
Monday.
third.
So I think there was a rationale with first Monday, but as we keep slipping, those are still avoiding dates. I'm also looking at what else is that impacting, because it was set on.
Labor Day,
Yeah,
voting day.
yeah,
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 there's
for what she was
almost
just saying.
there were 3 holidays that
Mhm.
fell on Mondays that I was like, Mondays are pretty active holiday days.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons why it's not always the first. I mean, it'd be nice just to say, we just meet on the first Monday of every, we're not meeting every month, every other month or whatever, but it wouldn't work out like that if you tried that. It'd be easy to remember though. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. I will make sure you get a copy of this as well. And let me stop sharing that. And go back to the main presentation. I gotta share it. And all right. You ready for me to go into these topics?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So John Al said that we're not going to take a vote on this, but we usually do get a recommendation from the ABTEL board before we take this to the board. So this is the critical shortage list. That would be something I would like to have somebody make a recommendation that we
I
accept
would
that.
accept that in one.
Second.
Don't get the gavel. No, she needs the microphone. Oh my.
We cannot chase the people listening.
Sure.
Bad business. All right, so a motion was made by Eric Moffa, seconded by Ron Ramsey to accept the critical shortage report as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Any abstention? Motion passes.
And the second item on the list is the world language ones. So there needs to be a change on here. So someone, if we do go forward, needs to take Arabic off there. Because Arabic, he informed me about Arabic kind of late. I'd already submitted the agenda. So, and I didn't know where he was going to go with it with the alternate pathway. But I don't think that we are really considering Arabic, but somebody needs to, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can amend this in motion, but I have a question first. Does the cut scores have to be part of the motion? And if so, I can do that in these ways.
The cut scores are generally part of the, because then I take those to the board.
Okay.
Because the board's gonna ask what cut scores. They're not gonna, now, they may not go with our recommended cut scores. That has happened. We've taken a cut score and they're like, that's too low, we're going higher. I've never had them say that's too high, we're going lower, but that definitely needs to be part of our recommendation.
I'll question that we add a Russian, Chinese, and Latin practice assessments at the recommended cut scores.
Looking at Andy. Okay, let me go ahead and take the motion in a second. Discussion.
So, this is an endorsement. What is the current endorsement for? Are we creating new endorsements by accepting these tests, or is it a world language? What's the endorsement?
We don't have an assessment for that.
Yeah,
Is it,
the endorsements are already there.
so it's, using the endorsement in Spanish?
We're going to.
So we're-
In Latin.
Or Latin or Chinese.
But you only get
There's no
endorsement.
assessment for Latin, Chinese, or Russian unless, well, Russian and Chinese, they have to take the ABTEL right now
Okay.
because of the absence of not having a practice.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking, we're not creating new
No.
endorsements. All we're doing is attaching them.
These already have endorsements.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so the motion was made to accept Latin, Chinese, Mandarin, and Russian at the recommended cut score. For Latin, that would be 152, Chinese, Mandarin be 164, and Russian would be 30. Or 130.
Yeah, I was gonna
I think one cut out, yeah, 130. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay, our next one, I think there's gonna be something else going on here, but this is to replace the 5001 series with the 8001 series for the elementary education tests. That's the
And it'd be my recommendation that this be laid upon the table until our April meeting, so that further information can be provided to you all. And the information that you did see today, you'll be able to digest and bring forth any questions, comments, concerns, or related issues at our next regular meeting. Yes, ma'am.
To lay on the table. Seconded.
Motion's been made and probably seconded to lay this item, number 3, on the table until our next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there any discussion?
I have one question. She kept referring to the study companion. Are we gonna get
We're
that?
talking about that.
Any other? Andy?
What are we're asking for? Like what John L's done, we really would like to see a side by side comparison.
Okay.
So when we delay it, we're asking for that comparison to come back and look at it. In April, and then also, I guess, with the current TR, with the new that specifically now, we just approved that test.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
now we're thinking about placing it already, so I'd love to like some comparison on
Would you like the data on, as we initiated it through the years till now?
it. Well, we can put that together.
Okay. Any other further discussion?
The only thing I have to say about the new 8,000 series is the cost concerns me quite a bit. It's one thing if they sign off for the 4 right away, but if they don't, then they do the individual test, or particularly if they're paying for the steps individually. The steps individually can exceed over 500 for the whole thing, and over 395 they do the sub steps individually for the subject test individually. That's a big difference from the current test.
And Shelby, that was one of the things that I was saying to Rob. There's also the timeline between when they take the test, when they get their results, and when they can reschedule the test. There's money attached to that. And if you don't get in that first pool, and you just literally tripled your expenses because you went to take one test. Any other discussion? I just want to say thank you for your feedback and your input. I could feel that, so I feel this is the right direction. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay.
Lays on the table.
Okay, this last one is in red for a reason. Number one, it was going to be a presentation by Dr. Jackson, but he's not available. But I decided I still wanted to get in front of your eyes to see if this is something you want me to bring to you either next month or later down the road. This topic is just about administrative degree. And administrative endorsement, I guess is the correct way to say that.
Mhm.
So right now, if you were a teacher and you went through the administrative program, passed all the tests, you could become a principal. If you were a school counselor, you would go through all the steps, pass the test, you can become a school principal. But you can't if you're a social worker or a school psychologist. And those are generally categorized in the same categories as school counselors. So we've been getting a lot of requests from social workers and school psychologists that want to go into administration. So whether or not you want us to bring this to you as a potential change to our regs to allow for school social workers or school psychologists to be included in the eligible group to move to a school administrator.
What's the NOIRA?
The Nora.
Nora, that's a notice of intent of regulatory action. Basically, we're saying we're opening up our reg.
Does that involve like some kind of, because we do want to have a pathway for school psychologists, but they do need some classroom experience, and I think we talked about some kind of internship, or I don't know, there was some term that we came up with about how they could get that.
The clinical experiences and.
And this can be
Yeah.
solved. more than one way. It could be solved with the legislator coming out and saying, this is what we want you to develop as a pathway for these people. Or we can go into our current regs, that's what the NORA would do, and we could see if there's some wording that we need to change to add them to the category. Your way would have more, you could do more things with your way. We really can't add a whole lot. We can take some things away, but we can't really add a whole lot. We definitely couldn't do it on any fast track. They would have to go through the full regulatory process, which for us, that's about 2 years. Whereas the General Assembly, if they wanted to take this on, they could accomplish it in a couple months.
Is there a way to like set up for us to have a discussion about this?
That's what I'm asking. Do you all want to have a discussion about this topic? And I will bring it and we'll bring some experts in and some people that could talk about different avenues of it. And then you all could decide that. But if there's like zero interest in the room for it, I'm not gonna waste your time and bring it.
I mean, I was trying, it's been, I think, brought up in public comment, and there's been people reached out to individual members of ABTEL, because this matters to their personal life. I mean, I'm open to the discussion of this. Again, not
The discussion.
I don't know that I support any ideas at this point, but I would
Yeah,
never.
but something might be brought up that, okay, we
All I want to
create
do is
these particular steps.
say they want us to proceed with more information. I don't
But
want to
without-
that we're gonna do it.
Something.
Yeah, yeah, discussion.
So ladies and gentlemen, let me pose this. If you are open to the discussion, to allowing them to pursue bringing this forward without us voting on the item, we can proceed as such. Is that what I'm hearing from the group? That you're,
Item for a.
yes, as an agenda item for April, and the discussion allowing them to pursue looking at what this would look like, not for us to vote as is listed.
No.
We're
As an
not
action
taking a
item.
NORA. We don't have a NORA to take yet.
Yeah,
Right.
You don't even have one designed.
okay.
Wouldn't be.
So we have another item for the April
Okay.
meeting. Mhm.
Thank you for your input on that. Dr. Dan Lewis is not here. He told me he was not gonna be able to make it. And Dr. Osei was here for a while, but she had to go. So there's not a report for either of those. And announcements, and then you close this out.
So are there any announcements or anything that we have not discussed on the agenda at this time? Please note our next meeting is scheduled for April the 20th, location here, the James Monroe Building. And then further communication to be received by Rob or Teresita moving forward.
For virtual, because at the beginning of the meeting, you mentioned that look into.
For the April meeting?
Yeah.
You've already had two, and you can only have up to 40% of your meeting. So 2 and 3 is 40%. We had another one, and then we could have possibly maybe had one.
On meetings, I should have brought this up before, but I don't know if anybody else has an hour and a half drive to come here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe we can start at 9:30, so it would just give me a little more time to drive, so I don't have to do up the time.
We can shuffle our time. Sorry.
Yeah, it's about 90 minutes.
Is 9:30 enough? We need to 10.
And then we push into the afternoon time,
Yeah.
whenever the 2-hour trip back for me is, I need to get home. Oh,
Maybe 9:30.
Okay.
As a compromise.
I can easily adjust that. That's correct.
Okay, so expect the April 20th meeting to begin at 9:30 a.m.
I hope.
No, as I said, a.m. Any other further discussion? Well, this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn before we go into our standing committee meetings. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made by Delegate Simons,
Second.
seconded by Ron Ramsey. Is there any discussion? It's not amendable nor is it debatable, but I wish you all safe travels happy spring break and all those good things. And I'm gonna see if I can find my voice that has already, left and traveled away with me. With that being said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The meeting stands adjourned, and I will turn things over to our respective chairs.
I'm gonna stop our, meeting first. If I can figure out how to do it. You know how to turn it off?
You?
Yeah,